Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Good Morning Scale-Ups here at the ScaleUp Institute studios, where today we will be discussing the latest news, the views, the opinions, and the opportunities for our Scale-Up community. Joining me here are my fellow co-hosts, Ollie Barrett, Serial co-founder and Scale-Up ambassador, and of course, Adam Hale, the chair of the ScaleUp Institute.
Good morning.
Good morning to you all. Now, before we delve into the detail, which I know you all love, let's first hear some words of welcome from the business advisor to the Prime Minister, Alex Hickman.
Thank you, Irene, and a great pleasure to be with you all today at the 2020 ScaleUp Institute Annual Review. Well, a great privilege to be here, and this is, I know, a real state of the nation moment on the scale-up economy. My name is Alex Hickman. I'm the Prime Minister's business advisor, and he's asked me to say some words at the beginning of this day, just to reflect really his own enthusiasm for the subject matter that you're going to be talking about today. I think it's fair to say that a predecessor of the current Prime Minister, David Cameron, and colleagues, and no doubt working on the work of building on the work of previous Prime Ministers, did a terrific job of building a startup culture in the UK, which is something that we shouldn't take for granted and which continues to generate dividend for the UK economy in terms of introducing thousands upon thousands of ambitious small businesses into the UK economy. The Prime Minister is keen to build on that. We don't take it for granted. We recognise it's something that we need to continue to support. But we also feel that we need to build on that culture and extend it into our scale-up culture. I think it's fair to say that the UK hasn't always done as good a job as it can in encouraging small businesses to grow into medium-sized ones and medium into large, to encourage CEOs to think big, and also to encourage them to maintain control and build their businesses all the way through, and ensure that their IP and control and R&D and jobs always stay in the UK. And I think we all recognise that as we look ahead to life outside the European Union, the more that we can encourage a culture that that builds a British version of the German Mittelstand, a large, thriving community of medium-sized businesses, it can only be a good thing for our future prosperity. I think it's also worth saying that clearly the stakes for the economy are currently looking quite difficult. COVID has done a great deal of damage to businesses, large, medium, and small. And I just quickly like to flag the Prime Minister's grave concern for the fortunes of businesses, particularly those in sectors like hospitality, leisure, retail, aviation, that have had a really, really tough time. And we are working very, very hard to try and ensure that we can begin to manage the virus, use exciting breakthroughs in testing and in vaccines to begin to control the virus's spread and open the economy as quickly as possible into 2021. And as we build back better, the importance of helping businesses scale becomes even more important. Regrettably, large businesses are not, we all know, are likely to continue to contract, are unlikely to be generating new jobs in the short term. And of course, that goes for many smaller businesses too. But those that have the ability to do so, we're very keen to help them to keep growing, to keep expanding, to keep investing, to keep taking on new people. And one of the UK's great strengths is that we have some of the best businesses, the best minds in industries and sectors that we know are going to grow quickly over the coming years. Sectors like life sciences, the creative sectors, advanced manufacturing, AI, robotics, tech of many forms. Across these sectors, the UK has tremendous strengths. And of course, there's also the added opportunity that hosting COP26 next year gives us. We are determined as a government to ensure that we use the months to the COP conference in Glasgow in November 2021 to ensure that we are both encouraging UK businesses to begin their own journey towards net zero, but also showcasing the fantastic UK expertise, products and services that we have. And this gives us a real opportunity to, I think, to build back greener as well. So quickly, where do we as a government think that we can help and partner with the ScaleUp Institute and other organisations operating in this area? Well, firstly, I think it's about championing that culture of ambition and optimism and expansion. And here the Prime Minister is determined to play his part. And we want to celebrate the achievements of so many businesses like the Hut Group, like Octopus, like JCB, like Dyson's, like Deliveroo, exemplars of successful businesses that are helping to drive the UK economy forward. So we want to help to boost and to celebrate that culture. We also want to ensure that the practical support in terms of advice and mentoring and connections and an early stage funding are available to businesses as they are growing, and they're available to them in their local areas. And finally, we want to continue to ensure that ambitious men and women running the tens of thousands of fast growth businesses across the UK are able to find the growth capital they need, whether it's Series A capital, whether it's choosing the LSE as the place to list their business. We want to ensure that the UK makes every opportunity available to founders and CEOs to ensure that they can find the finance they need to continue to grow and achieve their ambitions. I should just flag that I've recently been working with Innovate Finance and the Corporation of London to organise a series of round tables which have brought together the London capital markets ecosystem to look at what we can do to encourage more tech firms from the UK and overseas to choose London as a place to list their business. And it's incredibly exciting to realise how strong this ecosystem is and how ambitious everyone is to ensure that the UK and London achieve their potential outside the UK. And you may have noticed that the Treasury the Chancellor has asked Lord Hill to run a consultation on listings rules, which is just one step towards continuing to ensure that London remains highly competitive. And of course, there's much more work to do. We are restless. We are instinctively self-critical. We know that we have a unique opportunity and a responsibility to ensure that we can do everything possible to help business. But we are, I can promise you that we are looking towards next year, and we're determined to ensure that it's a year of recovery. Final point, just to reflect on the importance of scale up in the context of the government's well-known levelling up agenda. So we see helping ambitious men and women running businesses across the UK as an incredibly important part of this scale up work. Sorry, the scale up work and achieving this levelling up agenda. Because if I give you an example of Dyson's, a company I mentioned earlier, or JCB, two world-leading firms, both based in relatively remote rural settings, far away from London, from large cities. And it's a reminder that successful businesses can become incredibly powerful engines of place-based prosperity. They inject investment, they create jobs, they create self-confidence and high standards in communities up and down the country. And in that way, we feel that all of you attending this event today are doing an incredibly important thing in terms of moving the country forwards, creating the blueprint for future prosperity, and creating jobs and opportunity in the future. So thank you, all of you, for everything you're doing. This government is here to support you. I hope to meet many of you in happier, easier times, and look forward to working with you as we build back better. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Alex Hickman, advisor to the British Prime Minister, for those words. And I think that Alex and the team will be very interested by what we have released this morning, the ScaleUp report. It's live, it's unleashed, it's on the website. So please do have a look. Welcome again. My name's Ollie Barrett, and it's an absolute pleasure to be here. You've heard from the Chief Executive of the ScaleUp Institute, Irene Graham, already, and I already have a sense of you tuning in from around the country and beyond. So thank you for making the time to join us. Our hashtag Keep On Scaling, or hashtag ScaleUp 2020, as you prefer. But I'm not alone in this. Keep On Scaling has got a whiff of Strictly about it. And one of my partners for today, my partners in this escapade, is, of course, the chair of the ScaleUp Institute, Adam Hale. Good morning, Adam.
Hey, Ollie, how are you?
It's very, very well, thank you. It's good to see you in person.
And you?
Congratulations on delivering an extraordinary report. I'm going to grill you about it. But I wanted to know, you get approached for a lot of board roles. You said yes to the chair of the ScaleUp Institute. Why did you say yes to that?
It's actually been a year since I took on the role, and I'm so delighted, even with the events and activity of this year. The reason I took on the role is because the ScaleUp Institute, in my view, is the organisation that really made scale-ups a thing in the UK. And I think the team has just done so much, and also all the ecosystem around it, just to shift the thinking in the UK.
And right now, though, even if someone's just tuning in for the first time, let's just, and I know we'll cover this in the State of the Nation, but when we talk about a scale-up, just remind us, when we look up in the dictionary, what do we mean? What's the nub of that? Just to remind our viewer.
So what we mean is a business that's got more than 10 people that is growing by 20% for 3 years or more.
Brilliant. And so you've run the ruler over who's doing that,
correct,
where they are, everything. So we're going to look forward to all that. Just give us a sense of what we can look forward to this morning, because we've packed a lot in.
We can look forward to a lot, actually, and it's really interesting to hear Alex, and it's great to hear that support from the government talking about championing the culture and the optimism of scale-ups. One of the nuggets in the report is that 80% of scale-ups are planning to grow next year, which is great to hear. But also there's a lot of practical ideas in there. You know, Alex talked about advice, connections, finance, peer-to-peer, talent. We're talking about all of those different things in the report. These scale-ups don't just grow on their own. They actually need to be kind of, within and helped and managed in order to do that.
So when you think about the machinery, number 10, the Treasury, Innovate UK we'll hear from, your sense is we are connected in that way?
I think we're absolutely on the journey, but at the Institute and knowing around the country, nobody thinks we're there yet. But I think the great thing is that everybody realises how important scale-ups are. I mean, they employ 2 million people in the country. This is not some little cottage industry. Half of them have got more than 100 people. These are serious businesses. So, and it's about really making them a bigger and bigger part of the economy.
Got it. So we're going to have so much more to come on that. You're going to be with me throughout the journey, so I'm going to be turning to you for reflections along the way. But just to give you a sense, we're going to hear the State of the Nation report from the scale-ups themselves, and then I'm going to interview a whole range of people. We've got Lord O'Neill, Jim O'Neill. We've got a brilliant panel, including the head of the British Business Bank, the head of Innovate UK, the head of the Business Growth Fund, and entrepreneurs galore on that panel as well. And then we're going to go racing off around the UK to every corner of the kingdom to hear the very latest from the sort of scale-up front line, as it were. So lots to look forward to. And by the way, some of you are toasting us, hopefully, or wishing us well with your Scale Cup this morning. So I'm very grateful to our partners at Modern Standards. There you go, Modern Standards Coffee, for sending those out to some of us. I don't need that caffeine injection yet, but I might a little bit later. So thank you to our partners for that. Now, this is a really crucial moment. As we take a step back, we take the helicopter view about the state of the nation. So I'm grateful to everybody who has compiled what is about to follow. So sit back. Please share what most strikes you from our State of the Nation report.
Thanks, Ollie. 2020 has been an unprecedented year. We knew heading into this decade there would be the need for our scale-ups to adapt, but we could not foresee that there would be a global pandemic affecting every area of the country, every sector and every part of the world. It has therefore been heartening and encouraging for the ScaleUp Institute to witness the way in which the ecosystem, private, public, academic, entrepreneurial, has, ever more so this year, matured, collaborated and come together for our ScaleUp community to make sure that in this extraordinary year, our scale-ups, both large and small, old and new, have been able to access relevant COVID support to ensure they can not only continue to survive, but thrive. We have also witnessed the tremendous resilience and innovation of our scaling businesses. We have seen the enhanced focus that scale-ups have put on developing new products, new ways of working, and new innovations and service offerings. We have watched the pivoting of scale-ups towards solutions for the pandemic, whether it be Oxford Nanopore developing COVID tests currently being rolled out globally, Touchbite using Innovate UK funding to create facial recognition solutions for safe access at construction sites, or Future DJs going virtual at their new studio facilities to broadcast lessons to tens of thousands of young people worldwide. There is absolutely no doubt that as we head into 2021, it will be our scale-ups and their pioneering, creative and innovative spirit which will not only help us progress out of this pandemic, but also the economic impact it has had. So, as we take stock of the state of our scale-up nation and look to what the future holds, let's reflect on the numbers of scale-ups around the country, on their sentiments, their needs and the opportunities for tomorrow. As we do every year, the ScaleUp Institute has analysed the data held at ONS and Companies House to assess the numbers of scale-ups and where we now stand. In 2020, based on 2018 ONS data, we now have 33,860 scale-ups. These comprise just over 27,000 scaling in turnover, nearly 14,000 scaling in employment, and over 7,000 scaling in both. And whilst we have seen a dip in the overall numbers of scale-ups and a slowing down of growth between years, overall it is encouraging that employment and scaling in both is up, and that there has been a rise of 25% from 2013 in overall scale-up numbers, outstripping SME growth numbers by 8% and GDP growth by 13%. Strikingly, scale-ups remain significant contributors to our local and regional economies, adding 1 trillion to the UK overall, 50% of the total SME economy. They are our true growth champions, and they also continue to be highly productive firms existing in every part of the country across all sectors. Scale-ups also remain scaling multiple times, with some 64% at least scaling twice and 34% scaling at least 4 times. This year, for the first time, the ScaleUp Institute has looked at the scaling pipeline, which encouragingly shows a strong momentum, with nearly 17,000 scaling businesses in the growth bracket of 15% to 20%, contributing another $500 billion to the UK economy and another 1.9 million jobs. That said, not surprisingly, as in previous years, we have witnessed a variation at regional level in scale-up growth. When tracking over the 5-year period since 2013, we see 15 of our local areas performing strongly against their peers in sustaining scale-up growth rates in successive years of greater than 1 by 100,000 of population. But we note a continued pattern of areas where stubbornly the scale-up rate of growth finds it harder to consistently exceed 1 per 100,000 of population. That's why, this year, we've drilled down in work with Arup to assess what are the drivers of local growth. What makes the difference to an area that sees continued scale-up growth versus that which lags behind? And therefore, what can we learn as to the levers we should all pull to enhance scale-up growth rates at every local level? Using local authority data, regression analysis and controlling for variables, From a quantitative point of view, we analysed 8 factors, from start-up rates to transport links to bank debt to equity providers. We found a clear positive relationship as regards 3 key driving factors making a difference to local scale-up growth. The first is access to skilled talent. The second is access and proximity to clusters and hubs with a community of large, small and scale-up companies coalescing around a specific sector. And the third is access to equity and growth capital. These 3 factors showed a positive impact on scale-up growth rates. The rest were unproven in impact. On top of these, we layered a qualitative point of view. And whether it be areas interviewed that are doing well or areas aspiring to catch up with them, there was a consensus around 3 key attributes that would make a difference to a local ecosystem sustaining scale-up growth. These were active knowledge sharing, active universities and business schools engaging with scale-ups, and ecosystem collaboration, cooperation, ambition and identity. These factors, both the quantitative and qualitative, give us further guidance to the focus we need in our national, regional and local policies if we are going to make a difference to our local scale-ups and their ability to thrive everywhere. Turning to our annual Scale-Up Index, as an ecosystem, we should be very encouraged by the good news that with the concerted efforts over the past 5 years, we have more scale-ups breaking through into 10 million plus turnover than ever before. In 2020, despite everything, we now have 7,474 visible scale-ups, a 37% jump year on year, with 250 of these listed on AIM. And pleasingly, the number of female-founded visible scale-ups has doubled in a year. We are seeing notable scale-up clusters outside of London, in Leeds, Birmingham, Manchester, Glasgow, Edinburgh and Cardiff. The index consistently reinforces the importance of Innovate UK grants to scale-ups, with 286 million leveraging 5.2 billion of private sector money, highlighting the kite mark effect Innovate UK has in crowding in private sector backers to scaling businesses. BGF remains the most prolific investor by number in our visible scale-ups, while SoftBank has invested the most. And pleasingly, the scale-ups with the most employment and turnover come from a range of sectors. Congratulations to them all. Getting more scale-ups to a 10 million plus threshold should be a constant goal for us as we move forward. If that's what the statistics are showing us, what are the actual sentiments of our scale-up leaders around the country? Well, let's turn to the scale-up thermometer to take their pulse. We surveyed 645 scale-up CEOs from across the country. These 645 businesses alone contribute 6 billion in turnover and 23,000 employees to the UK, a significant group, representing a cross-section of sectors and industries. Despite COVID uncertainties, these scale-ups remain highly innovative, international and focused on the future, including how they leverage technology advancements. They are planning their way ahead for 2021, irrespective of the COVID pandemic. They are focused on growth, on R&D, moving into new markets and getting ahead in their current home market. As we head into 2021, 8 out of 10 expect to grow, 5 out of 10 expect to grow beyond 20% next year, and 1 in 4 beyond 50%. During this COVID period, they have pivoted, evolved and kept on innovating. They have utilised all forms of COVID support schemes, from loans to innovation grants, from the Future Fund to the furlough scheme, showing the diversity of their size, scale and needs, and the importance of these interventions being made. These interventions have allowed the businesses to keep operating and, importantly, keep growing. As I highlighted earlier, their ambitions are significant for 2021. 7 in 10 scale-ups expect to grow by turnover next year. 2 in 3 expect to grow by employment. But there remain significant concerns on the path ahead, with the headwinds of Brexit, and unsurprisingly, confidence is knocked over the conditions for growth and whether the UK will become harder to do business in. These scale-up CEOs have given us a very clear steer on their priority challenges, which they need addressed if they are to achieve their aims. The ScaleUp thermometer now reflects access to markets, both at home and abroad, as the biggest issue these leaders are grappling with, outstripping significantly the talent challenge for the first time. And whilst talent remains a key priority, concern on access to growth capital has dialed up to be on par. Whilst leadership needs, given the really concerted efforts now being made, appears to be a demand being met more fully, as is infrastructure. When it comes to support, the value placed on peer-to-peer engagement remains high, alongside in 2020 advice given by the financial services community of banks and advisors. Formal peer networks for supply chains are not common, but represent a valued opportunity in the future. Whilst in the public sector, the critical need for access to R&D, Innovate UK, procurement opportunities and public sector support delivered locally continues to dial up in importance for scale-ups. Our scale-ups remain wanting to be identified, relationship managed and proactively engaged with. As we delve further into each of these barriers to growth to get behind the issues faced, the following emerges. Whilst 46% of scaling businesses are selling to large corporates directly or as part of a supply chain where they are mainly in tier 1 or 2, 34% aspire to sell to large corporates. Government is not currently a prevalent customer, but there is significant demand to do more with the public sector. And, disappointingly, collaboration rates remain woefully low, with 2 in 10 collaborating with government and 3 in 10 scale-ups collaborating with large corporates or universities. There is significant scope to increase. Persistently, complex procurement procedures are a key barrier for scale-ups working with corporate and government parties, followed by finding the right opportunities to bid for and the time it takes to win a contract. From an international perspective, over 50% of scale-ups are trading abroad, and 6 in 10 are aspiring to do so next year. Whilst the EU remains a key market, going forward scale-ups see key opportunities in North America, the Middle East, China and other parts of Asia. Better introductions to buyers overseas, scale-up dedicated DIT points of contact at home and abroad, better insights and dedicated scale-up missions are all areas that scale-up leaders cite as significant ways they can be further helped in their export drive. On the talent side, it's encouraging to see that despite COVID challenges, scale-ups remain significant UK employers with a diverse talent pool. Social and technical skills continue to be top demands for employers, with critical thinking the most desired skill for the future, followed by service orientation. And scale-ups remain keen employers of graduates, postgraduates and school leavers, as well as significant providers of apprenticeships, internships and work experience, and they want to do more for our emerging generation, highlighting that funding schemes that back these, as well as improving entrepreneurial education and careers advice, would make a significant step change in addressing their talent needs. On the leadership front, alongside developing and recruiting into the leadership team, non-executive directors and peer networks remain important areas where scale-ups are actively seeking greater engagement. Turning to finance and growth capital, scale-ups use a range of forms of external finance and are far more likely to use finance than their peers. And of those using finance, significantly 5 in 10 are using some form of equity finance or plan to use it in the near future. VCs and angels are key sources of equity provision, highlighting the importance of these asset classes in the escalator of finance to enabling scale-up success. However, 4 in 10 scale-ups are clear they do not currently have sufficient capital to meet their growth ambitions, and a similar number perceive that funding access presides mainly in London and the South East. For those wanting to raise finance, key barriers are concerns on investor attitudes, concerns on the collateral requirements, and concerns on giving up control. These sentiments reflect a clear need for the finance ecosystem to continue to address the growth capital and regional disparity gaps, create better connectivity between scale-ups and investors, dial up proactive engagement around the country. It highlights the need for the continued evolution of the British Business Bank Finance Hub, of regional networks and investment programmes such as the Creative Scale-Up programme. So, As an ecosystem, we have clear messages from our scale-up leaders. They are pushing ahead on growth and innovation and exports, but confidence is fragile. There is heightened concern on markets and finance access alongside the persistent issue of the talent pipeline. So, if that's the issues and the needs, what are the clear actions we collectively need to take to help our scale-ups attain their ambitions? As in other years, the ScaleUp Institute has assessed how we are progressing against our policy objectives and given a colour rating on where matters now stand. As I said at the outset of today, in 2020 the ScaleUp ecosystem has worked closely together to ensure that between the private and public sectors at national and local level, there has been a deployment of relevant and targeted solutions for our scaling firms as the COVID crisis has developed. Whether it be the evolution of lending schemes, the development of the Future Fund for our pre-profit, pre-revenue scale-ups, the expansion of Innovate UK grant and challenge funding, or the flexibility of the furlough scheme, we have seen a concerted focus on enabling scaling businesses to progress their growth strategies. We also have witnessed the crystallisation of prior scale-up task force and industrial strategy work, which we and others were engaged in, with the deployment of funding to support the expansion of peer-to-peer activity and leadership programmes. As part of this, I'm very pleased to say that in coming weeks, the ScaleUp Institute, working with Innovate UK and the private sector, will launch a peer-to-peer national scale-up innovation network. At the same time as national public action, private and education sector scale-up initiatives and local programmes have continued to operate and develop, adapting to online virtual needs. Sector initiatives have also evolved, with fintechs, creatives and life sciences, to name but a few. We have also been very pleased to see the continued evolution of local scale-up programmes and the expansion of ones the ScaleUp Institute has endorsed, such as the British Library, Google Digital Garage, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses UK, Elite, Barclays Life Skills, Brabham and many more. In 2020, we add to the ScaleUp Institute endorsed ranks TechNation Upscale, Strathclyde University Growth Advantage Programme, and a range of financiers whose role in backing scale-ups has sustained and expanded over the last few years. We're also watching very closely the Royal Academy of Engineering SME Leadership Programme, which is having some terrific results. As a consequence of these local and national initiatives, it is encouraging that we are seeing a positive closing of the gap in the leadership demands of our scaling businesses. But, as we have seen in other areas, the scale-up gap is resolutely persistent and in some widening. Progress this year has been insufficient in access to markets. As we highlighted earlier, markets is the #1 issue for scale-up firms. In 2021, we must see a real step change in public and private sector engagement, with scale-ups on the 3 frontiers of collaboration, internationalism and procurement. Full implementation of stated intents, such as with the R&D roadmap, export initiatives and better implementation of procurement initiatives in the public sector, such as the SPRI and Social Value Act, must happen now. And in the private sector, large corporates should learn from those that are exemplar collaborators and consider further how they can engage more transparently with their scale-up supply chain and create a collaboration charter. International programmes such as the London and Manchester mayoral programmes have continued to make excellent strides in fostering new overseas market opportunities for our scale-ups. We want to see that momentum replicated elsewhere. And in finance, whilst much has been done in the last decade to seek to address patient capital needs and regional imbalances, the growth capital gap that was starting to close has widened as a consequence of the cyclical COVID effect. This has exposed our long-term regional and structural insufficiencies, as examined in our 2020 joint report on the future of growth capital and in recent work with BGF. Key concerted action is needed now to unleash institutional funds to close this gap, which is now estimated to be £15 billion per year. This will need a combination of regulatory and legislative measures, at the same time as evolving offerings within our existing development banks and agencies, and maintaining effective tax policies. Listing rules to match to our international counterparts will support at-scale follow-on funding, and we welcome the task force that is being set up to look at this matter. Overall, our key aim must be to enable the private sector to step up and work better with scale-up firms and enable scaling businesses to access equity more easily. Talent will always remain a persistent issue and one we will continue to need to have resolute focus on, making it easier for scale-ups to connect to relevant non-executive directorships and the pipeline of tomorrow. In schools and graduates, these must remain priorities, as well as ease of access to international talent, alongside continued focus on peer networks and leadership programs. Underpinning all of this, of course, remains the ongoing need, whether in the public or private sector, to segment efficiently, tailor solutions and utilise data ever more effectively to pinpoint our scaling businesses, to relationship manage them and nurture them through their scale-up journeys, linking them much more easily to the private and public resources available to support their growth. As we lay out our policy imperatives for 2021, we must leverage and build on what works to create at scale, long-term, sustainable interventions. We must align people and funding resources to our scale-up and growth sectors, championing their case, and build clusters and hubs at a local level, connecting our scale-up communities to the talent, finance and markets that they need to propel their growth. Scale-ups are the engines of the UK SME economy. They are a key to our future prosperity, our future employers, inclusive growth and regional equality. We, as an ecosystem, owe it to these innovative, pioneering firms to get behind them and address the barriers that remain. We need to scale up to build back better and to level up. So, if that's the statistics, the sentiments and the scores of our progression to a leading scale-up nation, earlier today I had the opportunity to visit the Situation Room of the ScaleUp Institute, where I met with our chair. And here's his reflections on 2020. Hi Adam, great to see you in the Situation Room at the ScaleUp Institute. What a year we've had in you taking on the chair of the ScaleUp Institute, and we could never have foreseen the pandemic that has been facing us this year. You've been working every day up and down the country with a range of the scale-ups. How do the sentiments of our scale-up CEOs in our survey match what you've been experiencing with those companies that you're working with?
Well, yes, Irene, it's been quite a year. It seems more than a year that we were together in the National Portrait Gallery. I think what I'm seeing when I work with those scale-ups is still real optimism. What came out in the survey is that the majority of scale-ups are still planning to grow next year, a quarter of them planning to grow 50% plus. And that's what I see when I work with scale-ups across the country. And I think one thing that a recession always does is it brings out the best in organisations. As they say, in a tornado, even turkeys can fly. So an economic boom, kind of everybody's succeeding. But actually in a recession, that gives the scale-ups the opportunity to really differentiate themselves, to really kind of, increase their market position, increase their potential and really start to come through as market leaders. And it's great to see that all across the country.
Adam, we were both delighted to also see in our index the breakthrough of the 10 million turnover barrier of many more scaling businesses. How do you think we make sure even more get through that milestone and that all our scale-ups don't sell out too early, a big topic of debate at the moment?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And to me, kind of getting through the £10 million revenue barrier is when an organisation really starts to become a leader in what they do. And that's what I think we can do more, is we can kind of have that shared sense of ambition in scale-ups that they want to be a market leader. And that's not just in the UK, that's across Europe and across the world. And to me, becoming a market leader takes 5 things that these scale-ups need to do: purpose, focus, customer success, innovation, and team. And it's the scale-ups that I see that do those 5 things, that they have the ambition and the mechanism to go on and be market leaders. I think the other thing, Irene, that we're doing that's really helping them is we're building these peer-to-peer networks and really helping these scale-ups know each other, inspire each other, and help each other in order to achieve that and to get well past that barrier.
Finally, Adam, we've got our scale-ups and the ecosystem listening in today. What's your 3 messages for them?
So my 3 key messages are segment, engage, and scale. So segment, that means really don't treat all scale-ups the same. They're across a variety of different industries. They're all the way across the country and they're different sizes of businesses. So not every scale-up needs the same thing at the same time. So really think about the different kinds of scale-up and the different solutions that they need to make them successful. And that's again why we're kind of building up these peer groups to really kind of understand that, connect them so they can help each other as well. So engage, the second one. So engage is all about being proactive. So be proactive with the scale-ups, really kind of help them, call them, help them, whether it be with financing, with people, talent and skills, with access to markets and expansion, really kind of help them. And also there's a great term that's really come through the tech industry. It's called customer success. So really thinking about the customer success of the scale-ups and think about, helping them get from where they are to be market leaders. And the third one is just scale up. Be relentlessly optimistic. There are always opportunities to grow. It is always possible to get better all the time. And I think what we're seeing is great examples of that all the way from Land's End to John O'Groats, and that's fantastic to see.
Thank you, Adam. And from a Scale-Up Institute perspective, we will keep on collaborating with all of you. We are together making inroads into our scale-up gap, and we look forward to continuing that momentum to seize the opportunities ahead. This is the Scale-Up State of the Nation News Bulletin for 2020. Keep segmenting, keep engaging, keep scaling. And now, back to you, Ollie, in the studio.
Keep scaling. Well, so say all of us. That was a fantastic gallivant across the scale-up landscape. Thank you, Irene Graham. I've had a call from BBC Newsnight's graphics team. They want to hire us. This is good. But seriously, what an epic amount in that report, which is now live on the ScaleUp website. Let's just have a look at some of those stats flowing in. That's the ScaleUp report out today, scaleupinstitute.org. Thank you to those of you who have already been sharing this hashtag ScaleUp2020, and I'm reminded of what a brilliant community this is, whether it's Stu Anderson down in Cornwall, Nick Sturge in Bristol, Sahar Hashemi, our Scale-Up champion-in-chief, and our co-founder over in Cambridge, Sherry Kutu, tuning in as well. So wherever you're joining us from, a very warm welcome. Just look at those inspiring numbers, and lots happening, lots still to do. But the good thing about the report is it points to the inspirational case studies of who's doing things brilliantly. So more of that still to come. Let me just say a thing or two about what's coming for anyone just tuning in. That was Adam Hale, the chair of the ScaleUp Institute, in the Situation Room. I'm sure he's in Chair Force 1, heading back over as we speak. We've got brilliant guests from all over the UK about to join us. But first, it's a privilege to welcome to Good Morning Scale-Ups Lord O'Neill. Jim O'Neill is a hugely renowned economist, needs very little introduction. He chaired the city's Growth Commission, inextricably linked, of course, with the Northern Powerhouse. So let me welcome to our screens Lord O'Neill. Jim, good morning.
Good morning, Ollie. It's a delight to be here. Fascinating being part of your exciting story so far this morning.
No, well, we're packing a lot in, and I'd just love to get some of your reflections on what you've heard so far. This is a big picture view, but what have you taken out?
So I have to say the first thing is, in addition to other things I do, as I think some of your panelists coming up now and others, I am myself also quite a serial startup VC investor. And throughout the whole of Irene's presentation, I was trying to figure out for my 30-odd that I have now, how many would qualify as in the scale-up category and how many will be. And And when I'm done and have a bit of time later today, I might actually rebox all my investments into that category. So in that sense, it's been extremely helpful. Listen, I think it's very exciting. Let me say 2 or 3 things, and then you can drag me off wherever you want. Starting backwards from 40,000 feet, or the biggest picture, you know, we're having this chat the morning after the second really bit of exciting news on vaccine discovery in a week, with the Moderna news in the United States. And it's something that I've been in the more positive camp on myself, and some of my own experiences and contacts in the health world. I think it's going to be followed by a third one in the not so distant future. Certainly, I hope. And I think the Oxford vaccine here in the UK would almost definitely qualify as a rather dramatically successful scale-up. But I say that not because of that example, but of which it is. But I think all of this means we can look forward to some kind of end game of this dreadful pandemic we're all experiencing sometime in 2021. And with it, I think certainly from a cyclical perspective, some kind of pretty steep economic recovery in many parts of the world, including the UK. And I would be amazed if the scale-up culture that's been so well highlighted here is not in the middle of that. And obviously it won't, if I'm right, it won't benefit everybody the same way. But I think it should be a very, we'll put it like this, a much more helpful environment for the scale-up ambitions than 2020 has been, which in a way is not saying much, but I think it could feel pretty good. Second thing to say, and again linking it to the crisis, from my whole experience of my various hats, but especially my previous significant involvement in international finance and the international economy, one of the major things from my perspective from a crisis is never letting a crisis go to waste. And peculiarly because of the scale and specifics of this pandemic and its savage links into closing down parts of the economy and forcing all of us to think out of the box about how we literally conduct our daily lives. In itself, it's actually a highly conducive, subjective stimulant to creativity and innovation. And I find myself thinking, which is not very fashionable, but it doesn't bother me. I've never been one for the height of all fashions. But I find myself thinking that we might actually get some productivity boost as a result of things we've all had to think about from this crisis. The broader productivity dilemma has been one of our biggest challenges of the past 20 years. And I think how we respond, whatever the size of our businesses, but certainly in terms of smaller businesses with big scale-up ambitions, this is a huge era and moment to build on. Third thing I would say, in terms of looking at your recommendations, a lot of them are such impressive cousins of a number of things we said in our recommendations in the Cities Growth Commission of 2014, and particularly in terms of the government's levelling up agenda. It's great that you had Alex Hickman on at the start, a guy I've known a long time. And these are crucial things that the government has to take seriously in order to position the scale-up world at the heart of levelling up. And in that sense, and again, talking after the rather intriguing political hiatus of the past week or so, with various personnel coming and going at number 10, this is a moment for, and I'll use it as one of my frequent pleads, this is a moment for the government to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. It was quite interesting to see Alex highlight levelling up, but the government's got to get serious about it and start showing real evidence that they really are prioritising it and they mean it, as opposed to just talking about it all the time. But I'll leave it there for now, Ollie, and happy to respond to anything else you want to ask. I don't want to take up too much time because I see you've got a fantastic panel coming up to discuss things, and at least there you got people that know about this stuff rather than just talk about it like me.
Well, you are somebody who certainly walks the walk. Also, we will have noticed that the second you mentioned productivity boost, we had Rishi Sunak trying to get you on the line as well, which I thought was very opportune of him. Can I just ask you two very specific questions? You highlighted the recent news in the vaccine. If we are to see a boost in scale-ups collaborating with the R&D teams and laboratories around the UK, how can that happen? What would you like to see to really stimulate a whole wave of renewed activity in that type of collaboration, very close to your heart?
I mean, I really do think it's a very good example to home in on. Because of my work on antibiotic resistance or so-called antimicrobial resistance, I have quite a bit of experience as it relates to that area, at least, about the behavior of pharmaceutical companies and their interaction with biotech. And a year ago, I would have not have dreamt that you would see not only the speed of success with these vaccines, but the scale of cooperation and collaboration that's going on in what is, at the end of the day, a highly competitive business group. And that's the kind of spirit that should be there more broadly. And to get to the heart of your question, there are two things to follow up with. One of which it's not the answer, but I'll talk about it. But the first one is to say that it would be nice to be in a world where we don't see such intense collaborative efforts only when there's a crisis. It would be nice to see that as part of our more normal culture. And that's easy for me to say, and somehow and this takes me to my second point, it's seemingly tricky for us as a nation and a culture of people to preside over. It was touched on earlier in Irene and Adam's early comments, but and actually something that Alex said in his formal comments too, that if you reflect really back for much of the past 50, 60 years, the remarkable success of our universities in true cutting-edge research and, in that sense, innovation. And, as always, we have something around 16 of our universities that are literally recognized as in the top 10, 100 of the world, which is 4 times our share of global GDP. And yet we have such a persistent weakness in many businesses remaining as British and becoming medium to large scale businesses, employing a lot of high value added people and helping raise their own health, wealth and welfare. And relating it back to the levelling up agenda, there is absolutely no chance of ultimate success of the levelling up agenda around the regions of the UK unless we can crack this problem. And it involves the things that Irene's highlighted: its skills, its talents, and its access to finance. And some of these have persisted for so long, they are what economists would call clear evidence of market failure. And that's where we need the hand of government to play as a patient investor, whether it be in helping on some of the human capital challenges, but also on the financial ones. And final plea to put out there, which I assume your panel and many others during the rest of your session are going to make their own points of highlighting. this talk that's circulating around about some kind of significant change to capital gains tax, I would hope that the Chancellor thinks very, very carefully about how to do that. I think it's right to get rid of all these abuses and to obviously try and find ways to raise capital. But when we need so much more successful innovation to become bigger and fruitful for the country, the last thing we want is to see a turning of the tap off to encourage more finance coming into this world.
We're hugely grateful for your thoughts this morning. Jim O'Neill, Lord O'Neill, thank you for your time and your support of this whole agenda. Very good to see you. Thank you, Jim.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. I apologise I can't stay with you for the rest of the morning.
No, good. Thank you. We'll be in touch. Well, from the hand of Goodman to the hand of Graham, who is waving us on through the morning. Irene Graham, referenced there by Lord O'Neill, who has just unleashed this year's ScaleUp report. We'd love to know what you're making of it. If you've got questions, you can see if you're tuning in live on this very interesting Tuesday morning. Get your questions flowing in for the panel that's about to appear. But before I introduce you to them, let me turn to the chair of the ScaleUp Institute, Adam Hale. Lord O'Neill there on fine form with a good few challenges. What did you make of what he had to say?
Well, I really took three things out of that, Ollie. The first one is that we both grew up in Stockport, so we're both Stockport lads, so I can't not mention that. But the second one was his point on productivity, which I completely agree. And actually, we've done some analysis on this. Scale-ups are more than 40% more productive than businesses on average, more than 40%. And they're growing faster. So higher growth, much higher productivity, what's not to like? Yeah. But the third thing I picked out was his point about recommendations. And I always think back to my favourite farming phrase, which is, you don't fatten a pig by weighing it. So we've done this great analysis. The question is, what are we all going to do? How's the hand of government, in his words, going to get involved? What can we do to help make all of these scale-ups better? And to really make this situation improve year on year on year on year?
Yeah, understood. So good to measure it, but also to understand where those levers are.
Indeed.
There's a misconception, isn't there, that the only companies scaling are the very new ones. And actually, the numbers contradict that a bit, it seems to me.
They really do. I mean, if you delve into the report, and again, there are just hundreds of insights in there, but one of them actually is the majority of organisations are more than 10 years old. So actually, you know, you don't have to be an overnight success, and it takes a lot of hard graft and development to get these organisations to where they are.
It's slowly dawning on me that Jim might have said the hand of government when I thought he said the hand of Goodman. So that's that could be a one for the.
Pretty sure it was government.
Yeah, that's bad, isn't it? No, I'm terribly sorry. I should go back to Jim actually on that. We'll pick that up in the notes afterwards. Can I ask you to take off the ScaleUp chair hat, because you are also invested, you sit on a number of boards, and I suspect some of the companies you have a very real interest in will have seen or benefited from some of the schemes available in the wake of this pandemic. What have you seen?
Yeah, so I want to give you an example. I'm chairman of a business called Arctic Shores, which is a SaaS, software as a service, cloud software business in the HR area. And what's interesting is I can really highlight one of the positive interventions of government and also an opportunity. So the positive intervention was the Future Fund. So the Future Fund was really kind of identified, pioneered, invented and rolled out incredibly quickly this year.
Particularly for fast-scaling companies, really.
Particularly fast-scaling companies. And we were there, it was like Glastonbury. We're on there online at 8:30, getting our application in and delighted to make that happen and to be recipients where it's a kind of a co-invest, essentially, with the government. So I think that's been fantastic. So that's great.
Good.
The opportunity, I think, one of them is in skills. And one of the recommendations in the report is to massively boost the number of young people studying computing at school.
Because those numbers are pretty small.
Well, just to give you the stats, 6 times the number of people study business studies and economics as they do computing.
Yeah.
And that, to me, strikes just this huge opportunity. We've got to engage young people while they're at school. So many more people are leaving school at 18. That's fine. But we've got one chance to kind of engage them. And also to help change the gender gap.
Right.
So at the moment, it's about 12–15% of those people are young women doing it.
It's a good opportunity to say on the ScaleUp Institute family tree, Founders for Schools, Work Finder, getting businesses into schools, into colleges, couldn't be more important.
Hugely positive. Right. But that, to me, the skills one, and that's, I mean, it's recommendation number 2, is to really boost that. I think is a really positive intervention where if we're going to change it, then we need that hand of government involved.
No, good. Well, I've got some challenges there to put to some of our panel. So, Adam, stay with us. Thank you very much. That's Adam Hill, Chair of the ScaleUp Institute. Now, speaking of which, we've got a whole raft of guests, and I think we might see them sort of all together. So let me welcome our guests who have been waiting patiently in our virtual green room. There they are. Good morning, everybody. Can you see me down the line? Here we are. Let me tell you who we're joined by. And I can see, let me just double check I've got it right here. Top left, I can see Rick Haythornthwaite. Is that you, Rick? Yes, good morning. Very good. Morning. Now, Rick will be known to many of you. He is a serial investor and entrepreneur, and he chairs the board of MasterCard, listed on the New York Stock Exchange. So good to see you. Good morning, Rick. Elspeth Finch in the middle next to me. Good morning, Elspeth. Hi. And Elspeth is a serial entrepreneur. She's the chief executive of a fascinating business called and we'll get more of that momentarily. Bottom right, Lucinda Bruce Gardine. Good morning, Lucinda. Good morning. Now, Lucinda is coming online. She is the chief exec of Genius Foods. Now, this is keeping us healthy. This is very nutritious. Started off bread, and now it's many other things. Isn't that right, Lucinda?
Absolutely. We've now sort of evolved into digestive wellness, which is really exciting because it takes in a whole bunch of new products that we can use. No, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loudly. Yes, digestive wellness. Yes. Well, that takes a lot of guts, I've got to tell you. And then there he is, possibly in his Suffolk or Sussex retreat. Stephen Welton joins us down next to Lucinda, who is the executive chair of the BGF, the Business Growth Fund. Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Very well indeed. Greetings from Sussex. So as part of our levelling up agenda, we need to represent all parts of the UK.
Absolutely right. And once again, the BGF, having deployed over £2.2 billion into scale-ups, tops the league again, which is fantastic. Next to Stephen, Catherine Lewis-Latour is the newly minted chief executive of the British Business Bank. Good morning, Catherine.
Good morning, Ollie. Delighted to be with you.
Quite a year to take the helm, Catherine. How are you?
Fine, hanging on in there. Absolutely. Yeah. We've become a bit of a scale-up ourselves, of course.
Yeah, you certainly have, and we're going to talk about some of the schemes you've had in place. Simon Edmonds, by no means least, is the Chief Business Officer and Deputy Chair at Innovate UK. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning. Welcome from Dorset.
Welcome from Dorset.
Yeah, that's where I am this morning.
They're very good. Well, how beautiful. Speaking of endorse it, many schemes endorsed by the Scale-Up campaign, and we'll come on to those in a minute. Now, Elspeth, can I ask you first a question? Firstly, you're in the business of helping organisations do stuff quicker, better, and in more productive ways. I see you as a bit of a guru of collaboration, and really market access, getting to customers, is this knotty challenge that so many scale-ups face. So if we're going to help them do that, connect with customers, what's top of the list of what we need to do more of?
Okay, so I think one of the real challenges and real opportunities is we've actually got a lot of the building blocks in place. But if we're going to build back better, we can't do what we've always done before. So if we think about procurement, quite often we look at cost. We need to start looking at what value will be created, what jobs will be supported, how we're moving to net zero, and the innovation that's going to be delivered. Now, I think what for me is really exciting is we've got the building blocks. So if I take 3 that we already have, 1, we've got the SBRI. It's already used by organisations like HS2 when they're looking to buy innovative products and services. There's so much more we can do with that. Yeah, I think the second one are really around the Social Values Act. And there's been new regulation that's put in place so that from January 2020 onwards, it has to be incorporated and social value incorporated into government buying decisions. And we know that organisations like Network Rail have already gone ahead of the targets in terms of what they're looking for from 2021. I think the third is around existing procurements to really to enable the tier ones to buy from their supply chain faster and more effectively. So we've got some really good building blocks already.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. And I'm going to come back with more questions, particularly on collaboration with government. Now, Rick, if I can come to you, particularly with your MasterCard hat on, what we want to see is more scale-ups collaborating with much, much larger corporates. So, tricky question, how are we going to make that happen?
Well, first thing it happens because there's intent from the top. And, I think from MasterCard's standpoint, we faced quite a number of issues right from our days of the IPO 15 years ago in terms of disintermediation threats, regulatory threats, competitive threats. And so right from the start, we embraced scale-ups as being part of our innovation agenda. And we, over years, have fundamentally shifted the way we procure, the way we look at our core activities, the way we look at our needs for innovation, and through our labs and Start Path and various other schemes, the way we nurture and bring in companies and make sure we link back up to the board tracking the extent to which we're doing that, and making sure that integration efforts when we acquire or support these work. In other words, there's a whole system that needs to be put in place, but it only starts at the top. And I think we're at a good moment. I think that more and more chairs and chiefs of executives and boards are realizing that the distant parts of their supply chain are withering on the vine in this crisis. They want more visibility and they want some key to being able to act. And so, what I think is required is some form of clear platform. I think everyone, companies large and small, need to start to rally around an open collaboration charter, which for the large company means get the governance, get the processes right. For the smaller companies, think about collaborating across boundaries and bringing their capabilities to that platform. And that's something we're trying to do in the UK, which is called Open Nation. And so, there has to be a very practical response to a desire by leaders to see a difference.
Yeah, no, well, kudos to you for all that you're doing. More questions for you to come, Rick, particularly with your creative industries hat on as well. Lucinda, can I ask you, as an entrepreneur, it's been quite a year, presumably. Highs, lows, biggest thing you've taken from it, leading a scale up through some choppy waters?
It has indeed been a very interesting year, and who'd have thought that we've had some really wonderful surprises actually that have come out of it, as well as people struggling, working at home on their own. I think that's probably been the biggest low for us. We are a resilient business because we produce staple products for people who aren't able to eat gluten. So there are always people that need our products. But we have been focusing with a sort of a wartime focus on resilience, working to make our process as efficient as possible. With the 2-meter rule, we had to figure out how to continue producing and fulfilling orders, even through the 70% uptick in sales during the spring, with fewer people on the line. And in fact, we learned very quickly that actually we could produce great products, probably better products, with fewer people. So that's been really interesting, and just making sure that we have a permanent team, removing agency staff that create distraction from the lines, and just having a really well-trained permanent team has been really important. Very interesting. Sales have remained within expectations, although food service has dropped due to all of the problems that we've seen on the high street, etc., and in hospitality. We've actually seen a huge uptick in our European markets and in Australia, because people are becoming much more aware of their health and cutting down on gluten in their diet, which has been very interesting. We've also worried about our supply chain. The only ingredient that we use in our products that come from the UK is our Scottish water. We're just based just outside Edinburgh. Everything else comes from all over the world. So we were very, very worried at the beginning of the supply chain, but that's looking good. So all in all, so far so good. We've innovated many products. The team have been working in a bubble at the bakery. I've returned to my original state of using lots and lots of products from my kitchen at home. So it's been a very productive time.
No, good. Well, I'm going to resist from making any bread jokes because, frankly, that's not what we need at this time of the morning. Stephen Welton, I see you as sort of at the heart of this scale-up agenda. So I'm going to ask you the most open question so far, which is what needs to happen next? You're top of the league in terms of organisations funding scale-ups. Where do we go from here? What's your big challenge that you bring to us this morning?
Thank you, Ollie. I think the big challenge is actually to build on what we've done. I mean, picking up on a couple of points that Irene made, I mean, a 25% increase in scale-up since 2013, that is a tremendous achievement. Yeah. The thing that I would really focus on is the pipeline that you referenced of 17,000 companies. So what we've done over the course of the last 5 to 10 years is to actually successfully identify a universe of companies that will really change the face of Britain, that will drive innovation and disruption, and will create some of the global companies that Jim and Neil was talking to. So that is clearly the opportunity. It's not a surprise that that's grown post the financial crash, because that led to an increased focus on funding for small businesses. It's not a surprise that we're really focusing again with the pandemic still underway as to what comes next. So the risk is that we effectively stagnate here and that we don't convert those 17,000 pipeline companies into true scale-ups. And I thought it was very revealing in Irene's analysis within the index that access to funding is now coming up the concerns of entrepreneurs. If you add in things like capital gains tax, which Jim mentioned, that's an associated factor. So the challenge for us now is not to accept where we've got to, and it's clearly good progress, but it's nothing like the progress that we need to make. And sort of putting on my BGF hat, we make more than one investment a week. I'm delighted that we continue to lead the way, but it's not enough. And we have to really think now about a step change in equity capital. This gap that we are talking about, BGF together with others has tried to quantify that. But if we think it's something like £15 billion a year, we have a long, long way to go. And the challenge is how we access that funding rather than talk about it. And the opportunity and the clear source of that capital is going to be the UK pension fund industry. So we have a significant and growing industry. What we have not done and what we need to do is to unlock that capital, because I'm very confident that the ecosystem is now healthy, but it needs to really accelerate in growth.
Yeah, indeed. So this is a recurring theme. Thank you for bringing it back onto our agenda this morning. Catherine, congratulations on taking the helm of the British Business Bank, talking about huge reserves, obviously owned by the UK government, technically, and deploying huge amounts of capital into scale-ups behind many of the schemes that have emerged through the pandemic. Catherine, can you give us a glimpse of what has to happen or what you will deliver next in terms of some of those schemes that, frankly, scale-ups have found so valuable?
Yes, thank you, Ollie. I think the place to start is what we've been delivering since the first lockdown in March. We have stood up 3 new loan guarantee schemes, which are serving a very broad range of businesses, not just scale-ups, but also micro businesses through to large businesses as well. And some of those large businesses are traditionally outside of our remit. The important thing is what we do, as you say, to move beyond what we've delivered to the next phase of that. Something that we've talked about on the forum this morning is the Future Fund, which was the 4th scheme that we stood up this year. That was specifically to target scale-ups and to support equity-backed high-growth businesses that were between funding rounds. And as of today, we're approaching 1 billion that's been provided to a broad number of companies there. If you put everything together right now as a snapshot today, we're delivering finance approaching 62 billion to over 1.4 million SMEs right across the country. But I think it's really important that we don't stop and dwell on where we are, but really keep our vision and sight set to what we need to deliver for the economy going forward. It's what we call at the bank our beautiful business as usual. And in the background, behind all the schemes, the new schemes that we've been delivering, our business as usual has continued uninterrupted. So probably I could talk a little bit about British Patient Capital, which was set up 2 years ago, coming out of the Patient Capital Review. We reached a very important milestone for BPC earlier this year, with over 1 billion of commitments to venture funds made. And we have just over $1.5 billion of capital still to invest to support our portfolio going forward. So we've got some significant dry powder, but as has been raised in the State of the Nation, it's not nowhere near enough. So pulling in the private sector to support the scale-up agenda is going to be fundamental to take us into the next phase of our development.
No, good. No, thank you. Well, with those revelations, I'm amazed your landline hasn't gone off during that. So thank you, Catherine. Simon Edmonds, the report talks quite clearly about the kite mark effect that Innovate UK funding has, almost crowding in private sector money. Can you talk a little bit about how that happens and whether we've got that right in terms of what we see happening?
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. Certainly we see the grant effect crowding in investment. And it's one of the things that we've tried to do all along, is to try and encourage as much as possible some investors into companies, scale-ups and startups, not on the back, but encouraged by the fact that we regard the technology the companies have worthy of a grant, and we're happy to look at the technology and assess it in a very positive way. That should give some confidence to investors about the company. They will do their own due diligence, of course, but it should give investors some confidence that the technology the companies are developing and deploying are really exciting, and certainly exciting enough for us to invest in as well.
Simon, will you say a word about the SBRI? This has been highly commended. We'd like to know what's next for that particular initiative. Just remind us what was at the core of it.
So the core of SBRI is meeting a government challenge. Elspeth, I think, mentioned HS2. So we have a competition currently open with HS2 where they are looking for some specific construction challenges in their route system, and we're matching that challenge with a number of businesses that could meet that challenge, and it results in basically a procurement contract for the SME. It's built around an American system, SBIR, but SBRI has been running in the UK for a long time, and in our COVID response programme, we've been using SBRI in our Sustainable Innovation Fund, which is targeting COP26 type technologies and solutions that we will be able to showcase next year.
No, good. And there's a good breakdown in the report of exactly the sorts of sectors that you've been targeting. So thank you. Now, panel, we're going to go quite quick fire because we've got questions coming in from the audience. I wonder, Rick Haythornthwaite, chairing, I want to say Creative England or Creative UK. Can you say something about how we continue to support the sectors that have had such a tough time in 2020, particularly for the creative industries?
Yeah, it has been very tough, and it's vital to get this industry back on its feet, the sector. I mean, it's good to hear Alex Hickman mention it in his list. Yeah. This was growing 5 times the rate of the UK economy when we went into this downturn. So we've got both a survival challenge and then a rebound challenge there. In terms of survival, the government's grant, 1.5 billion, was vital. But there are a lot of gaps. There are a lot of people falling between the gaps, particularly in the freelancer community. And we need to make sure that those people stay in the sector and don't drift away. Yeah. And then really on the rebound, it's, the creative industries have sort of kidnapped the word creative. Creative should be applied to all sectors. So I think as we grow back, there are sources we've heard about today for talent. networking there. There's, in terms of digital skills, the digital boost program, ScaleUp program, everything that's there is available, and we've got to make sure that the creative industry companies get connected to those.
Yeah.
But then we do vitally need these access to markets. It's not a surprise that's come out ahead of everything else, and that's really something we're working on. But not just in the narrow sector, right across industry, making sure that these companies can be visible to all.
No, good. And global firms like MasterCard have a huge role to play in that. Now, again, I'm going to go super quick fire because Elspeth, the Institute of Engineering's leadership programme has been spotlit by the report. Can you just tell us one thing that you think makes that programme such a success that maybe we can learn from? And I'm going to ask, forgive me, everybody, I'm going to ask us all to be pithy as we race through our morning. Forgive me, Elspeth.
Okay, so the Royal Academy of Engineering's SME Leaders Programme is amazing because it does one thing incredibly well. They've got their fellowship of exceedingly experienced, knowledgeable engineers from across the sector, from tech leaders through to professors. And they connect those people through mentorship to those fast-growing SME companies. So it's a connection of skills, talent and expertise that makes it really succeed.
Brilliant. That's super helpful. Now, Lucinda, I wonder, we're going to go racing around the UK shortly, but if you were to give us one thing that Scotland is particularly doing well to support its scale-ups, what strikes you? You might have seen it firsthand or from others.
Well, I'm lucky enough to sit on the board of Scotland Food and Drink, and I've been really, really impressed to see how close the government are in their support of initiatives such as the setting up of the Manufacturing Centre for Excellence and the new Food and Drink Academy, both of which will be really, really valuable hubs for the food and drink industry to get together. Sort of back to Irene's point earlier.
No, good. So here is a question for the whole panel. This comes from Francis Campbell. What can the panel suggest to encourage better collaboration between scale-ups, corporates and universities? Now, in the style of Celebrity Squares, if you've got an offer for me on that, if you'll raise your hand, because some of you will have stronger views. Who's going to give me something on that collaboration between scale-ups, corporates and universities? Stephen, pithy as you can, please, sir.
You've got to take risk. Universities are clearly innovating. It's very early stage and it's unproven. We are starting to work with universities in areas like life sciences, and we'll do that in clean growth. Investors have to accept there is more risk, there's risk of loss, but without risk of loss, you're never going to make success.
Yeah, no, totally. Other contributions, particularly on collaboration with corporates and universities. Yes, I think I see either Simon adjusting his screen. I've sold auction lots for less than that, Simon. And then, of course, I can see Rick. Briefly, Simon, Rick.
Come talk to us. Talk to your Enterprise Europe Network organisation. Universities are complex, but we have ways of putting you in touch. If you have a catapult centre in your area, they're also very good at navigating into universities.
Good. Well, bang goes the inbox of the Chief Business Officer of Innovate UK. Good. Rick, on that question, and then we'll turn to others. Rick.
Right. My message to the large companies: be imaginative in the transparency of your challenges. Work out what is your knitting and do that. Everything else, put out, be transparent, ask for contribution from the broader community.
So, and how do we make our innovation labs have substance and not be sort of baubilicious and tokenistic? That's for Rick, because you've had a good innovation lab, but too often these are window dressing and PR.
The way you make innovation labs relevant is to put real stuff into them, real challenges that can move to revenue quickly, and then people will respond.
Got it. No, thank you, Rick. Now, a question for all. I'm keen to get as many of you in as possible. This comes from Simon Thorpe. What a legendary investor he is out of the Cambridge area, but across the UK. What would the panel like to see government do more to support UK scale-ups as a result of today's report? Now, clearly, I'm asking you about your collaborators here, but let's have a friendly provocation from you. Lucinda, let's start off with you. Let's put in a challenge and then others respond. Go for it.
Well, I would like to see collaboration between universities and industry just being day-to-day normal. So government incentivising businesses to work hand in hand would be great. I've seen it firsthand in my business, the benefits it's brought to us. And this is a really, really big area for improvement.
What if I said, Lucinda, you've got all the incentives you need, go for it. You might say, no, we need it. What's a practical idea to really accelerate that collaboration?
I think making the contract process just really easy, make it non-threatening for businesses. I think at the moment there's a lot of chat about IP right at the beginning, which makes businesses very, very nervous. So I think just making it a really simple, unthreatening process would really help them.
Yeah, and Catherine, when you get your Zoom or Teams call with the Chancellor, with the Prime Minister, what's top of your agenda? What are you calling for from the British Business Bank's perspective?
Well, of course, Holly, where we can play a big role, I think, is in terms of removing barriers to access to capital. So that's something we talk about frequently, and something that we've had discussions about in the last few weeks is on the back of research that we produced, showing that there are significant barriers for some entrepreneurs, some businesses to access the capital they need, not because they don't have the skills and the talent and the expertise, but because they don't quite look the right way.
Yeah.
And if the economy is going to fire on all cylinders, we really need to get past that. What we've seen is that ethnicity, gender, place, income all play a role. We know what the issues are, so we'd like the government to work with us to try and break down some of those, very sometimes invisible but very real barriers that there are.
Yeah. Good. I have to say, Catherine, as you're speaking, I'm wondering whether Elspeth thinks that the government is easy to collaborate with for scale-ups, and be as candid as you like. Elspeth Finch.
I think it's a mixed picture. I would be lying if I said that there weren't pockets of expertise. And if I look at people like Network Rail's SME strategy, it's incredibly strong. They've gone ahead of the 33% target. And last year, they delivered 35% of their spend to SMEs. So there are good pockets of excellence, but it is still too hard. And it is much easier. I've been both sides, being a small company, being a big company. Right. And it is much harder to get through the procurement rules as when you're small. And that needs to be simplified quite quickly.
Right. No, so simplified as swiftly as possible. Thank you, Elspeth. I tell you, team, what I'm trying to get my head around off the back of this morning's report is there sufficient capital available? There's a school of thought that says there isn't enough. There's a school of thought that says there is enough. The scale-ups just don't know how and where to find it. Stephen, you're normally fairly direct on these sorts of things. Let's get a final reflection on this potential gap that has come up a couple of times this morning. Stephen Welton and then others, let's cram in.
I think it's a real gap. It's not potential. We've talked about it forever. I think the role of government here should be to facilitate and to top up and support, but not to lead. The private sector has got to do that. I think the Future Fund was very successful. It's far too small. So at $500 million, it's a good start. If we're going to raise 15 billion and we need that a year, I think the government should be looking at a role of something like 20%, which means 80% has got to come from the private sector.
Right, and very briefly, Simon, you might speak to that match funding potential. I've seen it firsthand through Innovate UK. Others will have views on this gap. Simon, briefly on what Stephen's just said.
Yes, I agree with him. I think there is a gap. We've been completely surprised this year, I think, pleasantly surprised that we have seen huge demand for research and development through the COVID programs that we've run. This has been our busiest year ever, and these are the companies that will be scaling in the future. Some of them are scaling now, but 60% of one of our competitions were completely new companies to us, and we were just keeping them going through the process of COVID.
And by the way, thank you, Sam. By the way, Rick, of course, you wear multiple hats, investor, chair, shareholder in companies. Have you had, of those companies, had what they need? What would your challenge be to close the gap?
Well, I'm going to pick up on Stephen's point about that the government has a role to play, but the private sector has a big role to play. And the private sector doesn't just have to put in funding. I think the private sector put in talent, mentoring, channels, and these days, data. Many companies around data is an invaluable resource, and big companies can play their role.
Yeah, 100% understood. Now, thank you. We're just coming to our final closing minutes. And by the way, in the report, some fascinating research on angel investment and on the importance of peer-to-peer networks as well. Catherine, I wonder if I can get any glimpse from you about something else we can particularly look forward to. There's a challenge there from Stephen about the British Business Bank. You're not going to give us a scoop this morning. I hope you are.
There's something I'd like to add, I think, because we've talked a lot about the supply of capital, and I absolutely agree that working with the private sector is top of mind. But we also have to think about the demand side of it as well. So anything that we can do to join dots, put the information into the market in a way which is digestible for businesses is also key. So our finance hub is a key part of that, and that's something we'll continue to build on. But our vision is really to build on what we've done and to do more of that, but probably to be more purposeful in terms of what we're expecting that capital to do. So I think in the last 5 years, we focused on increasing the supply of capital. Going forward, I think we want to think about what's going to happen with that capital so we can reach some other objectives if we're thinking about, sort of building back greener, for instance. So that's really where we'll be focusing in the coming weeks, months and years.
Got it. Thank you, Catherine. And just very briefly, literally for 20 seconds each, I want to turn to Elspeth and Lucinda. I'm asking you to channel the voices of the ScaleUp teams, if you like, around the country. Just any particular thing that we can do as a community to serve you better in the 12 months ahead. Lucinda and then Elspeth. I'm going to come to you very briefly.
I think lots of signposting for scale-up businesses, making it really, really clear where to go for the help that's been described today.
Yeah, very clear. That sort of sat-nav for scale-up. I think that will resonate with many people tuning in. A final word, Elspeth Finch. Now, hang on. We've done well, hadn't we, on the mute until now? So, Elspeth, come on then.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Fantastic. As a founder of a digital SaaS platform in the infrastructure sector, for me, the one thing is access to market, because you need that market traction to then get funding. And it's the combination between the two things which need to work in harmony together. And I think the accelerating more around things like Innovate UK programs are excellent in really supporting those connections between companies like ourselves and the big buyer organisations.
Yeah, I think that's such an important place to end this conversation on, because others on this call and tuning in will agree wholeheartedly with that. So with that, Elspeth Finch, to Rick Haythornthwaite, to Simon Edmonds, to Catherine Lewis-Latour, to Stephen Welton and to Lucinda Bruce Gardine, thank you so much for joining me. Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So back in the day, we didn't used to end our calls with a wave when we're coming from a studio, but now we do, because it's 2020. Now, we are going to go racing momentarily around the UK. So I've sort of got the sort of mother, father, brother and sister of all Zoom calls lined up in the background. So we're going to go racing around. And I don't know if I can just remind us if we can get a shot, but I am actually here in the studio with Adam and Irene. And that was an absolute whistle-stop, Irene. My goodness. That was great. Now, Adam, are we ready?
I think we're completely ready.
We are ready. Well, we're going to go live. So, OK, so we're going to get that Zoom call up and running. But I guess my question for you is, what have you managed to take from the ScaleUp report so far? Hashtag ScaleUp 2020, if you've got thoughts, and also hashtag keep on scaling. Is there a recommendation that particularly resonates? Perhaps we've missed something off, something you would have liked to have seen bumped up the priority order. What is it? Please keep us informed, because we want to hear from you on the front line. This is such an important annual moment where we come together as an ecosystem. And indeed, soon we're going to hear from colleagues in Cambridge, in Cornwall, in Manchester, in Liverpool, and many other places in between. But I do just want to say thank you to the team at the ScaleUp Institute for putting this report together today. ScaleUpinstitute.org is the place that we should be going to find that report and all of its very helpful commentary. I wonder if I can just take a moment before we go on our sort of race around the UK to get Adam and Irene. That panel there was sort of quite packed, wasn't it, with insights. I wonder what you took most from it.
I think that overriding message of we're on a journey and we are not yet done. And as Stephen said and all of the panellists said, you know, we've got to now just turbocharge forward. We can't rest on our laurels.
It's quite an interesting point from Stephen Welton there about it's all very well to deploy cash through the Future Fund, Adam, but what we need is the private sector cavalry rocking in as well. And I just wonder how you think we can make that happen.
I think I completely agree with Stephen, and I think it's a partnership, and everybody needs to work together to make this happen. Yeah. And I think, you know, capital and finance is an intrinsic part of success here. But what was also interesting to hear the panel talk about was this importance of networking and communication, and particularly peer-to-peer. Yeah. Because I mean, I've been a ScaleUp CEO. It can actually feel quite lonely. Yeah. When you're out there. And so the more that we can do to support the teams, to bring them together, to really help them. And we've got some really exciting initiatives that we're going to start rolling out and working with other people on to really kind of bring that peer-to-peer networking forward.
Is your sense then, Adam, that the peer-to-peer networks are where they need to be? Do we need more of them, better signposting? Because I've seen firsthand we all have the value that they bring. How do we scale that piece up?
They're a long way from where we need them to be. So I think the good news is that now there's this widespread recognition that it's an issue and a challenge, and everybody's kind of embracing that opportunity. But let's be clear, there's a long way to go. And again, you know, Irene ran through some great kind of scale-up programs all over the country, which is fantastic. What there isn't is a kind of intra-community to kind of bring together that community of success.
And we do see that. We do see that through the Institute's work on that ecosystem, bolstering that, Irene. I think, can I just ask, and I know we're waiting to go across the country to our Zoom call, but can I ask you, Irene, to talk a little bit about the extent to which scale-ups are going global? Because we've talked a lot about the UK, how we level up, but let's widen the lens a bit.
Well, I mean, we've seen in our actual review this year that 50% are already exporting and 6 in 10 want to go global next year. So, and their main market at the moment, Europe, but they are looking far beyond that now. China, Asia, Africa, they're really looking beyond the borders of the immediacy here. And they need more help. And I think, you know, what we've seen is some great initiatives in London, the London International Mayors Programme. Manchester have learnt from that, created something there. Yeah. But we don't see that replicated across the country. And we really need to see that because we know the results it will bring and we know our scale-ups are really hungry for that. And it won't cost that much money. In the scheme of the billions we've been talking about this morning, this is actually a small amount of money with real targeting of our scale-up businesses, dedicated trade missions, real support around it, the peer network that Adam's talked about, and there's a huge opportunity there, and we just need that in every city and every region.
So it's almost that meta layer, isn't it, to scale up those who scale others up.
Exactly.
We can't overlook that.
Absolutely, but to Irene's point, this is something that needs to happen all across the country, because we track the density and the trend of growth of these scale-ups, and you know, London's a hotspot, great. Gloucestershire's a hotspot, but yet the Tees Valley could be so much higher. And so it's not uniform across the board. And we want to, I mean, the great news is there are scale-ups in every single region, in every single LEP. And by the way, shout out to all the LEPs and the growth hubs that we work with. You're doing fantastic work. But we just want more. Yeah. And will we ever be satisfied? Well, no. Because there's always more that can be done.
Can we, on that, Irene, can we sort of bust a few misconceptions about this whole scene? Because I just am staggered when you hear in the news and media this idea that such a minority of scale-ups or businesses export. But actually, when you put a scale-up lens on that, the picture looks dramatically different. It's too easy, isn't it, to conflate the one with the other. Scale-ups are different.
They are different, and that's why we are very focused on saying you need to segment. You can't talk about SMEs as just one homogenous group. You have to be absolutely clear. You've got the startup phase, you'll have the sustaining phase, the staying ahead phase, but you've got this group that are scaling and scaling multiple times. We have to be so religious, actually, and robust on segmenting in the private sector world and in the public sector. And I think that's what we're looking forward to. As Adam says, there's some great initiatives around the country now at local level, in Scotland and Wales and elsewhere, where that segmentation is beginning to take effect. But it's got to be rigorous, and we've got to see that across both the public and the private sector. It's part of the work we're doing at the moment when we're looking at the business support review that the government's currently got underway.
No, good. Well, hold that thought. This is Good Morning ScaleUps, and we are live in our UK-based studio, and very grateful to you for tuning in, and also to the reflections of some of our brilliant guests. Elspeth Finch, go and have a look at and her organisation. Lucinda Bruce-Gardine there, talking about the power of scale-up support in Scotland. Her at Genius Foods with an amazing team. Stephen Welton, if you look at the chart of who's done the most deals investing into scale-ups once again this year, it is the BGF, the Business Growth Fund, by quite a way, actually, Irene. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely, and been very consistently the key investor by number into these businesses.
I would have liked to talk to Elspeth in particular, with the Institute of Engineering hat on, about who is doing the scaling, Adam. Does the report tell us anything about the age, the gender of the leaders of these organisations? Have we got any challenges we might put out there to the community?
Yeah, and this was an insight that I read in the ScaleUp review, which I didn't know whether to be happy or sad, actually, but I'm now 2 years older than the average age of a director in a ScaleUp.
So hang on,
and I'll leave you to read the report to figure out what that is, but neither of the two numbers have a 3 in them. I'll just say that. But there are some really good trends. So over half the scale-ups now have a female C-suite member, which is, again, a really, really good trend. Because, coming from the tech industry, we don't have the gender diversity in the industry that we could or should have. But also the fascinating insights. I really enjoyed what the panel was saying about working with universities. Actually, I have personal experience of this. So the scale-up I was running was actually in an enterprise centre and then in a science park built by Reading University. Yes. Just stuffed full of scale-ups. And I think just a great example of how a university can get tangibly involved.
Yeah, and open those doors. Because sometimes universities can seem, it is said, as being slightly impenetrable, Irene.
But I think we see some great evidence around the country. Cambridge, Andy Richards is going to be joining us shortly in Brabraham, the campus, the research campus there. Really strong connection to the university, to the ecosystem, to the investors, and building that space to grow, as Adam's saying. And we're seeing that more stepping up now. Yeah. Ironically, through COVID, I think the universities themselves are seeing that need to engage even further, and we're seeing some great examples in Leeds and elsewhere.
Right, well, you will be pleased to hear that I've got some questions coming in for you, Irene, and for Adam, as we wait to sort of unite the UK. I feel a little bit like, would it be Terry Wogan or Graham Norton on Eurovision, waiting for our friends and brothers and sisters around the United Kingdom to tune in. The B word, we have avoided it so far. It's not Brabraham. Irene, your reflections very pithily on Brexit.
Well, look, I mean, all of our scale-ups view it negatively. However, they're equally saying, well, we've got to deal with it, we've got to move ahead, and we've got to be able to look to the global opportunities elsewhere. So it is a problem, and it's negatively impacting their businesses, but they're still very buoyant about growing and going global. And I think that's the spirit we've got to tackle this.
Interesting. So, Adam, that's glass half full. Give us a personal take. You chair businesses, you invest in businesses.
The biggest area of worry, one of the biggest ones that I see that other scale-ups talk to me about, is actually in data. The UK is part of the GDPR, which is EU legislation, which governs basically everything. I actually think the GDPRs have been a force for good in terms of making organisations much more careful with their data, and the consequences are much higher of breaching it. Yeah. So the question is, what happens next? Right. But I actually think the GDPR has been a force for good, and we've just got to make sure that those data transfers can happen so easily, because with the cloud, data transfers between countries literally all the time.
Yeah.
literally all the time, and that's not going to stop.
Well, can I draw you a bit on some of the sectors and industries, particularly packed with scale-ups, that we think might scale up in what's being known as the new normal? This is a question from Sak Rasool. Irene, a shift in sectors that may scale up. What does the report tell us? What do you predict?
Well, we've already heard about life sciences, and we also touched on the creative industry. Now, a lot of the creative industry has had impact, but look at the gaming sector. That's going great guns and even more and truly global. So we've got different things happening in different sectors. We've got the green economy. There's more and more happening in AI. There's so much occurring across this space, and also in the manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. So it's really across every sector. And we shouldn't just look at one sector, it's the subsectors within it and how they're also dealing with it.
It's difficult in a recovery, Adam, by definition, to know for investors and supporters tuning in. Clearly, the ones that are struggling need our support. On the other hand, investors like yourself must be looking to new industries who will rise next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a tremendous amount of growth and opportunity out there. I think what's been unusual about this recession that we're in has been how variable it's been. Certain industries have been kind of just dreadfully just closed down in terms of kind of creative sector, hotels, travel, leisure, etc. Whereas other industries, I mean, some parts of biotech and tech have just gone completely crazy. Normally in a recession, everything's impacted. What's been different about this, never mind the health consequences, has been actually the variability. But I think what's interesting, again, in the report is just how much more every scale-up, whether it's business professional services, life sciences, how much all of them want to use AI, big data and machine learning working more. So that's a challenge and opportunity across all of the scale-ups.
OK, well, don't forget, have a look at the recommendations in the report, loud and clear, on that first page, those recommendations. And, by the way, I would strongly suggest taking the time to have a proper go through it as well. It is an epic piece of work. Right, we can go live. We're going to spring around the country. And, blimey, if you haven't got you know, the G-force cutting in at this point, it's about to come, because we're going to go racing round. As I say, good morning to the mother of all Zoom calls. I think I'm going to bring you in one at a time, but let me just say good morning to everybody joining us from around the UK. And I'm going to turn my focus, and I don't know if everyone can see that, but let's just imagine they can, with a big wave to say everybody. Gosh, I can see so many friendly and familiar faces. That's epic. Good. Right, Ollie, get on with it. We're going to do it in our clusters and our first group, and that's right, we're going to hear from the scientists first, and of course some of the clusters. So let me briefly bring to your screen, and this is going to be a race. Forgive me, I could do an hour on my own with each of our different guests. Andy Richards, who chairs Babraham over in Cambridge. Ned Wakeman is the director of Alderley Park in Macclesfield. And Tom Bridges is the director of the Leeds office of Arup. Good morning, Andy, Ned and Tom. We've heard about clusters already. Andy, I want to know the latest hot off the press from Babraham.
Hi, Ollie, Irene, Adam, fantastic. Thank you. And although this sounds a little bit like being a jury on the Eurovision Song Contest, welcome to all the scale-ups from Cambridge and from the Babraham Research Campus. There's never been a time when the impact of innovation in healthcare and life sciences has not been so clear or brought more into focus as we try to learn, apply technologies to diagnose, to discover new treatments, and of course, to prevent through wellness, and I had to mention vaccines. The pace and responsiveness of the sector during this time has been phenomenal. And as Lord O'Neill said, we've collaborated and worked in different ways than our very traditional regimented models. And the sector, if it's been in COVID areas or not, has maintained its core activities. Certainly at Babraham, things are going fantastically and the companies have continued to scale. Our big issues are talent and capital. And talent has gone global. There's never been a time when I've been less concerned about recruiting someone across the other side of the Atlantic or in Asia or in Europe and having them based there. So I think there's some really positive things on the talent side. Good. On the capital side, financing has continued. Innovate Future Fund have been really important, but larger financings are taking place. One that I'm deeply involved with that was announced this week was at Congenica, which just raised $50 million. The thing from those big financings are the very international nature of the syndicates. And so internationally, funders are funding things. Areas of concern, to scale, life science companies go public. And that's been raised earlier by Lord O'Neill and Alex Hickson's really important space. At the moment, the companies that are scaling are all looking to go to NASDAQ, which of course is a possibility and can work. But for the UK, it would be great to have the London market acting. I know there's a whole set of initiatives to try and do that. But things are going well here.
No, good. No, thank you, Andy. Kudos to all that you're doing. Ned is over in Macclesfield. Ned, and by the way, I'm going to personally send as much coffee as you like to anyone who brings these in under a minute, and I'll apologise personally. I might even deliver them personally. But Ned, tell us what's going on.
Thanks very much. I run the accelerator at Oldley Park, and so the original response to COVID was, with my team, very much to work with as many companies as possible to conserve cash, to look at the support that was available and facilitate that. And then very quickly, we established a peer-to-peer group, which we hadn't had before. And they very specifically asked for it to be unstructured because they had access to so many other structured, agendaized webinars and meetings. And out of that came a real shared learning about response. And initially it was around space and shift work and health and safety and furloughing. But it very quickly moved on to how do we run our business? How do we do BD, raise our profile in a new world? Yeah. And then recently, when we talked about wave 2, our team expected a real concern about downsizing and business, but actually the focus from the companies has been on their growth challenges. Many of them have the growth challenges and the challenges that are highlighted this morning around raising profile, around access to cash, access to international and national and international markets, and real skills development. And what we've seen though is that catalyzers like ourselves and many across the country can have a massive impact. The companies that we've supported have grown twice as fast, raised 2.5 times as much money, 3 times less likely to fail. And so we play a very important role, and people across the country that do this play a very important role. Very quickly, Oldley Park itself, in 3 weeks from start, with the Medicine Discovery Catapult, was able to establish a lighthouse lab. They've made sure that the site itself was open. Scientists can't do their science without access to the labs. The Open Access Lab, in partnership with Waters and Cytiva, is open. And then a number of the big strengthened places around AMR are going forward. And so the site has continued to run. The companies are growing.
Thank you, Ned. I want more. I want more from all of you. And we just haven't got enough time for it. But why don't we go to lovely Leeds? Tom Bridges over at Arup. Are you with us this morning, Tom? New home of Channel 4, not Tom, Leeds, that is. Tom, what have you got for us?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. We're working as part of a team led by the University of Leeds that brings together universities, entrepreneurs, corporates, angel investors and public sector organisations to develop a real strategy around how we can maximise scale-up performance of the Leeds City region, particularly around innovation-led entrepreneurship. We've been doing a programme at MIT together, and that's been really positive to be part of. And I think it's important because the research we've done for the ScaleUp Institute for Irene shows that, factors for success in building a strong scale-up ecosystem are knowledge sharing, good peer-to-peer networks, and we know that not enough scale-ups are working with larger corporates and vice versa. Active university engagement is absolutely critical, and only 35% of scale-ups are working with universities. Jim O'Neill talked about how in the UK we're good at doing the R, but maybe less good at doing the D, and that strong sense of local ambition and all the stakeholders pointing in the right direction around this agenda. So, our advice to local areas is focus on building those networks, and I think what we're doing in Leeds is really exciting.
No, good. And presumably some of that happens with Nexus, Tom. Is that the right neck of the woods?
new service and with a building which the University of Leeds have put in place to really improve the performance around those university spin-outs and attract investment for firms that want to collaborate with the innovators.
No, I think it's amazing. I was there last year. It's like a scale-up cathedral. No, kudos to you and the team in Leeds. Thank you to that first team. Now, we're going to think about going global, taking scale-ups to the wider world. I'm joined by Janet and Richard. Janet Coyle, who's Managing Director for Business at London & Partners, also leads on brilliant initiatives, including Silicon Valley Comes to the UK, which happened last week. Richard Jeffrey is the Director of Business Growth at the Manchester Growth Company. Janet, Richard, good to see you. Good morning. Janet, tell us, what is the latest from you? You have also helped create the Mayor of London's International Business Programme. Tell me what you see.
Thanks, Ollie. And first of all, very quickly, thanks to the ScaleUp Institute. Brilliant report. We always really look forward to this each year. So we've pivoted pretty much since the first lockdown, listened to what the scale-ups were really wanting. There's still a very strong appetite for international growth. So we've now run 7 virtual trade missions since March. So really focused on sector trade missions to North America, to China, France, Germany, in sectors that are really growing with fintech, edtech, creative, smart cities. We did a whole mission on that. And we're seeing sort of real appetite in our international markets for wanting to meet our talented scale-ups. So the last one we did was fintech out to North America, and we introduced them to over 12 US banks. And there was real engagement. We also connected our scale-ups with scale-ups in North America and did some sort of speed dating so they could all start to sort of form this sort of global network. So in a way, as much as we are faced with these challenges and working remotely, there have been a few silver linings because we've got better access than we maybe typically do for some of the senior leaders at some of these big corporates and international markets. We've been able to open up these trade missions to people who typically wouldn't normally be able to give up a whole week or even afford an airfare perhaps. So there has been some real positives to this. We're seeing growth in the sectors that I've just mentioned. We're collaborating. I'm really pleased I'm on with Richard because we're collaborating with Manchester Growth Company and looking to do some joint trade missions going forward. So watch this space on that. We track all our data, Ollie, but that's probably enough for now, is it?
That's hugely helpful. Thank you, Janet. Virtual trade missions. That's one of the standout phrases of the morning. I love it. Richard, Janet's hinted at a collaboration. Just tell us what's been cooking and what you're hoping to do more of.
So since the start of COVID, we've worked with over 6,500 businesses, and in that, yes, there's lots that have had a really challenging time, but there is a group that are really positive about the future, who are accessing new markets, developing new products, and really reaching out for that external support. And what I love about today is we get Irene's report, and Irene gives us the homework for the year. She told us to focus on scale-ups. We did that. She told us to focus on global scale-ups. We've done that. So I can't wait to find out what she's telling me to do this year. So really looking forward to getting to the depths of that. And of these firms that are looking to grow, then actually there's so many support programs that are out there for them, including, our Spark to Sale program, our Exceed program. But yes, one of our flagships is our Global Scale-Up program. Look, I think the standout for me statement to take away from this is we've had more markets entered by our Global Scale-Ups since lockdown than before lockdown on the program. And I think that's because in many ways, what's happened at the minute is those markets have been blown wide open, that through the collaboration, a big point that you brought out this morning was the collaboration, through the collaboration with KPMG, Santander, DWF, the airport and DIT, we've been able to pull all those partners together to give this unique access to those global markets. And you don't have to get on the plane now. You don't have to go out there. You can get in front of people. You can sell your products. You can develop those relationships through those partnerships we've put in place. And I'm really excited about the work that we're doing with London and partners to bring that together and take that out and see the further expansion of our global scale-up program. And one personal highlight for me, and this is where I think I'm going to blow my free coffee, but one personal highlight for me was taking over 100 individuals through our growth sprint, where we were taking people through an international growth design sprint. People said you couldn't do it. You have to be face to face. You can't get the collaboration. We absolutely did it. We found a way to get the technology to work and had huge feedback. So people like the Insights people, Broadstone, Steamco, going on to do amazing things across the globe.
Good. Thank you, Richard Jeffrey. Good. Richard, you're too engaging for me this morning. You see, I wanted to keep hearing more from you. The free coffee still stands. After all, on what grounds?
Oh, I'll take it. I'll take it.
Right, take it away. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to stay up in your neck of the woods, if I can put it like that. This is our sort of third group that we're bringing together. I don't know if you can see them one at a time or together on screen, but let me just say who I'm delighted is with us this morning, and I thank all of our guests, including you, most of all, for tuning in, for your patience as we get everyone rallied round this morning. Janice Mears is the Head of Business Growth at the Liverpool City Region Growth Company. Colin Bell is the Director of Business Growth at the North East LEP, or LEP. Sarah Pavlou is the Programme Director of ScaleUp North East. Thank you, Sarah, for all that you do. And Amin Vepari is the Business Finance and ScaleUp Lead at Lancashire County Council. So very briefly, and forgive me again, I could talk to you literally all morning on this, but Janet, can you give us a glimpse from the Liverpool City region, please?
Thank you to the ScaleUp Institute for the event so far. It's been excellent. So it has been a really challenging year, I think, for everyone, I think. But, you know, just to keep it brief, you know, we want to remain to keep that focus on supporting our ScaleUp businesses. You know, we've invested in them quite heavily, and we want to continue to do that. So some of our key ScaleUp programs, our ScaleUp MBA, has taken a new influx of 21 students this year, which are continuing to work with Liverpool John Moores University and with Growth Platform in filling those cohorts. That's been working really, really well. And alongside that, other creative and digital programs that we have been developing alongside our combined authorities, such as our Gather program, which is a peer-to-peer program for tech leaders. And this really, we've had to kind of adapt and develop these solutions due to the pandemic and bring them online. And, you know, a bit like Richard said, people said it wouldn't happen. You're never going to be able to do it. You need face-to-face for peer-to-peer support, but we have been able to deliver that. We've delivered 110 businesses through that program, through the pandemic since April. And we're continuing to support that, developing further peer-to-peer network programs, which growth hubs are developing around the country. So, you know, all I just want to say is they remain critical to our economy. They have had a hugely challenging time and real challenges to face, but we've wrapped the support around them and working with the ecosystem to develop finance solutions, talent solutions, and advice and guidance and business support solutions.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Janice. Thank you for all that you're doing. Colin Bell joins us from the North East. Hard to do justice to so much activity just in these minute-long snippets. But Colin, what would you share with us this morning?
Yes, so briefly, alongside our delivery partner, RTC North, we've managed to secure another 3 years funding for the delivery of ScaleUp North East. That will give us the opportunity to deepen relationship management and also strengthen peer networks. And it will also be underpinned by a connected network of accelerators that are really around working with high potential startups across the region. Over the past 4 or 5 months, the team have been really busy working with scale-ups across the region to introduce new products and services, enter new markets and access new customers, and also put new operating models in place. I think just one thing to highlight, the general feeling is that because of that, our scale-up population will probably exit the current situation with more strings to their bow. That seems to be leading to a positive problem when they're thinking forward. So we're hearing from businesses within the region that they're worried about how are they going to service their core demand as it returns, alongside some of the new products and services and markets that they've picked up through the pandemic. So that's a positive problem to have, but also suggests that areas like accessing working and growth capital moving forward will probably be of critical importance.
No, good. Thank you, Colin. And just to be clear, when you say an additional string to their bow, what sort of example are you thinking of? Because that's an idea we can get into.
It's essentially to survive the pandemic, they've had to look at pivoting, you know, that kind of the classic word pivoting. So they've looked at new markets. They've identified new problems that have been thrown up through the pandemic. So a great example is, one of our scale-ups in the northeast, a business called Tharsis into robotics. They recognised that social distancing was particularly causing problems in manufacturing settings. So they developed a new service called Bump that essentially allows manufacturers to manage social distancing, etc.
Good.
So it's new products and services that have been developed through the pandemic that will create more demand moving forward.
Thank you, Colin. Let's stay in the northeast because Sarah Pavlou joins us. Huge amounts going on in the region, it seems. Sarah, what would you add? We got Sarah on our line. Is she with us or not? No, that's fine. Is she on the call? I don't see her. OK, that's all right. Well, forgive me, but I thought Colin did the North East proud there, quite frankly. I wonder, from Lancashire County Council, Amin Vapari, you're the Business, Finance and Scale-Up lead. Amin, give us your view of what's happening and any highlights from the year, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, good morning, everyone. It's been a phenomenal year in many ways. And I think aside from the pandemic that we're in, we started a year ago with our dedicated Scale-Up Hub 2.0. And when we started that journey, it was about creating a culture, creating a collaborative platform which works with key stakeholders in the county, but not just within the local area, regionally and nationally as well. And we've done that with the likes of Richard and the Growth Company, very much learning from our peers across the country. I think underpinning a lot of the success that we've endured in this last year has been working and very, very closely at that with our Growth Hub, Boost Business Lancashire. Yeah. And that's been really pivotal because working with our Growth Hub and our extended platform allowed us to engage with businesses and services to make sure we're not reinventing the wheel in some cases, but we're making it more clearer for scale-up businesses in terms of what is available to them. So therefore, I think we've had a very positive journey, some really fantastic feedback, results. Our scale-up businesses, we've just finished some pilots just now, which we've helped 40 businesses, and all of those 40 businesses are not just scaling at 20% year on year, but a lot of the growth trajectory is 50 to 60% year on year. So our aim is very much to work with the findings from the ScaleUp Institute, which we've done with female founders, social enterprise, and a number of other key areas as well. Continue to do that, work collaboratively on a local, regional, national level, and continue to create that culture, which I think is very, very pivotal.
No, good. No, thank you. I mean, and you get my special prize for setting a minute timer and continuing to rock on through it. But it didn't matter.
Could you hear the alarm in the background?
No, it was great. No, it was great. If only Nicholas Parsons was here to see our new view of just a minute. But it's good. Now we're going, oh, good, old friends galore. This is great. We're going to the coast, actually. Stu Anderson joins us, I hope, who is the Operations Director at Cornwall Growth Hub, and a bit of a legend, I might add. Stu, are you with us?
I am. I had a few problems, but I've literally just logged in, Ollie. So perfect timing, perfect timing.
You've been
Hello, good to see you. Good to see you. A bit of a legend. There's a way to be described. Thank you for that. So yeah, Cornwall. What an interesting year. So we, from a kind of support point of view, we like a lot of the growth hubs actually were very quickly to adapt to an online model. Luckily in Cornwall, we're very well served with 95% of people having super fast broadband. So online delivery, moving to sort of webinars and virtual meetings for a lot of businesses was a good thing. We could do it. Obviously some sit outside of that, but that was a great kind of base to start. We've seen, I suppose, the biggest problem we had was a lot of our businesses are in the hospitality and tourism sector. So a lot of the support was around those. But what we did in Cornwall, we quickly set up a business cell with all the main partners that met weekly to talk through survival, but also to look at growth as well. So we've had one eye on survival, which has been key. We're predominantly micro businesses down here. Hanging on to cash was really key, but with one eye really on growth. So making sure we were using data and tools to really target some of the businesses in terms of who we know who were suffering because of COVID, but also to look at people who were still growing, benefiting, some of the tech companies, you know, who have almost come through this benefiting from the tools and things like that that people are using. So we've been really focused on both, which has invariably meant the Growth Hub has been very busy, continuing to work with partners and just doing absolutely everything we can to push businesses forward.
Good. No, well, all power to you, Stu, and the team as you continue to do that. Lou Williams joins us from Coast to Capital. Lou, you're the growth manager there. We'd love to know how your programmes are evolving as we go through this remarkable year. No, well, don't worry. We'll get a message from Lou in due course. But I am grateful for Stu for that update from Cornwall. Now, we're going to go to the other end of the country. We heard from Lucinda Bruce-Gardine from Genius and heard about some of the support there. But I'm hoping to welcome Leah Pape, Head of Scaling Services at Scottish Enterprise. Sandy Kennedy. Sandy and I, we still haven't met in person, but I get to see you today. Chief Exec of Entrepreneurial Scotland. And I hope John Anderson, the Head of SME, Small and Medium-Sized Business Engagement at Strathclyde Business School. Another brilliant case study in the making there, by the way. Leah, are you with us? And tell us what's happening in Scotland.
I am. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can, loud and clear.
So, yes, lots happening in Scotland, like the rest of the UK. In terms of some of the themes that we're seeing, resonate with what's been said this morning, so I won't go over that. Probably 2 or 3 points that I'd like to pull out from the discussions, if that's okay. The collaboration across our ecosystems at a regional level has been huge over the last year, and that continues. So a real coming together, a real sharing of insights and data and how we respond to our scale-ups and what they need at this current time. So that would be one thing. Irene, you mentioned earlier the importance of the pipeline, and that's something that we continue to recognise in Scotland. Not just the existing scale-ups that are in the ecosystem, but also that pipeline that's coming through, and really important that we continue to balance our resources towards that early stage part of the pipeline, so that in 12, 18, 24 months, we don't have a dearth of companies in our economy and our early stage scale-ups coming through. So that pipeline is extremely important. And with that importance, through the Scottish Government, we invested £38 million during the summer into that early stage company. So from our university spin-outs, our early stage high growth startups that are at pre-seed investment stage, through to some early stage scale-up. So about 150 companies and spin-outs helped at that stage.
Good.
The importance of peer-to-peer, and I think Sandy and John will come on to talk about that, so I won't go over that, but a huge demand in terms of our accelerators, our scale-up programmes, and bumper year. I mean, one of the programmes that we run, Unlocking Ambition, 40 places for companies that are focused on low carbon and our net zero businesses. 260 applications coming in September for that, so a huge demand for that. And one of the other things that I would just say, I want to watch a recent review that was commissioned by Scottish Government in terms of the Logan Review, looking at the tech sector and the ecosystems, but much of the recommendations within that, which we'll be working on, resonate across our ecosystems for our scale-ups as well. So that would be something else I would flag.
No, good. We will look out for that. And I know that Mike Jackson is coming to us very soon, who will have a view on that as well. Sandy Kennedy, you are a brilliant connector. Tell us the highlights for you, anything that stands out. Nice to see you.
Ollie, great to see you too, and joining you on Celebrity Squares here. So a real pleasure. So just really picking up what Leah was saying, collaboration is absolutely vital. And we've been running the Can Do Collective for 7 years now, and there's over 100 entrepreneurial support organisations within that. And that crosses the full spread of entrepreneurship from micro, rural, right up to scale-ups. And then within that, the scale-up piece is absolutely vital. And really, there's a big shout out to a load of organisations who are doing fabulous work. You'll hear from John shortly around what University of Strathclyde are doing. There's also Scale Up Scotland, there's Codebase, there's Opportunity Northeast, there's Elevator, and then there's the funders. There's so much activity going on. But if that activity is not connected to each other, then the potential won't be realised. So we're looking at it and this comes out in the Logan report, much more with a systems thinking approach. So looking at an ecosystem as a whole, and then seeing what the whole output of the ecosystem is. Because one of the features we've noticed, and it gets picked up very strongly, is if we do a ton of activity, if it doesn't turn into the growing number of scale-ups, then we're not fulfilling that potential. So I really, really commend that systems thinking side of it. The other two bits I wanted to pick out, and really because I agree with so much of what's been said already, but just two areas that's not been picked out that we are seeing. The first one is we are seeing a period, particularly in the early stages of the lockdown, of leaders really looking inward at their business and actually looking at their own purpose and looking at what they want to achieve with their business. So we've in our case, we've been running programs around conscious leadership, and the engagement within that has been well beyond our expectations. So I think we're going to see, as we come out of lockdown, a real sense of profit with purpose. Really, why is it that people are doing that? And the second bit I want to pick out, and I think this is an area where we really have to keep a sharp eye, is our young people. We're seeing, because of this dislocation, the scale-ups and the startups are really getting after it, but our young people aren't accessing opportunities like they would do normally and are more dislocated from the system. So the more activity that we can do, which actually joins up our effectively the talent of the future into the the growth and the excitement of the scale-ups, will be really, really important. But yeah, a lot to go for. And really, I wanted to back what was said earlier by Adam around this segmentation. There's so much variety in what we're seeing, from people who are really struggling to people who are, frankly, their time has come. So it's time for us all to wrap our arms around it and get after it.
Yeah, here. Fascinating reflections there on that idea, maybe of human scale-up. There's another book for Reid Hoffman, if I ever heard one. John Anderson, you're a past master at getting universities collaborating with business. What's the secret and what's new with you?
Thanks, Ollie. Hi, Irene. Hi, Adam. Well, I suppose the big thing for me, and today is a very special day, is getting full endorsement for the Growth Advantage programme. We've only been at it for 5 years. I always knew we were onto something with this real emphasis on peers, which we've heard about, peer learning, which you've heard about really from minute one today, and wrapping around some of the really amazing stuff in the business school. Eleanor Shaw, who I think is on the call today, has been a huge part of this. The collaboration piece, Tom mentioned it, Leah's mentioned it. This wouldn't work, and it wouldn't have the impact that it does in a measured way if it wasn't for the support. In our territory, Leah has been phenomenal at Scottish Enterprise and the Scaling Services team supporting it, and likewise Sandy, getting it out to the right segment of the scale-up. And it could not, that's my timer gone off, so I'm over my minute. One story that I think illustrates that perfectly. A current Growth Advantage programme participant, Craig Letton, MMR Global, he's got a global platform for the drinks and hospitality industry. Yeah. Entrepreneurial Scotland member, recommended to the Growth Advantage programme by Sandy. Scottish Enterprise account managed business. Right at the start of lockdown, most of his business disappeared, because he's in the hospitality industry. Yeah. In September, he raised £2.6 million from BGF to scale his platform globally, because he took a bit of time early on to think about, whoa, what do we do now? No, we're onto something. Used his relationships, used the support that there is within the ecosystem, and got the support to drive it through. And BGF, in their press release, said, even though we noticed a significant downturn in sales, we knew that was just a temporary blip. Good. And we're investing in this great, fabulous example of how things are joined up.
It's those sort of stories, John, that I think we have so many of those still to tell. So thank you for sharing that this morning. Claire McLaughlin joins us from Northern Ireland. Claire, highlights from the year for you and something we can learn from your brilliant work.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for the chance to chat to you even briefly today. So yes, Claire McLaughlin, I'm a scaling account manager. I work for InvestNI in Northern Ireland. And our role and our remit is just to help the economy grow in Northern Ireland, and main focus is through export markets and external sales. So everything that's been said today in terms of the importance of that export, absolutely endorse that. We work with over 1,000 companies that export. My role particularly is to work with companies that have a turnover of just over 10 million and are ambitious and are growing 20% year on year. So our role is to work with the CEO to help them deliver that ambition. And we do that through access to finance. We do that by trade, spotting new opportunities in market support across the world. A lot of that, as everybody says, has gone virtual these days. And we have offices and connections across the world that help companies with that through new products and new markets and innovation and networking. I suppose in terms of this particular year, obviously COVID and impact, what we've seen with the real scaling and scale up companies is a K type of recovery. Some struggling and some that have just pivoted, taken the opportunity and done very well. And lots of learning for how to respond and how to be resilient in that. I suppose our biggest challenge that we're facing at the moment is Brexit, with Northern Ireland and our companies and understanding the impact and potential impact. So we have a lot of work ongoing in terms of online webinars and support and financial support to understand logistics, transport, customs, taxes, all those things that we don't know yet. But I suppose my one learning is that just how resilient our companies can be and how motivated our entrepreneurs can be. And if we understand and work with those CEOs, we're able to bring in the networks and resources, whether it's innovation, whether it's universities, whether it's DTI, whether it's all sorts of different aspects. And we see ourselves as the main conduit to making those things smoother for companies.
Good. Thank you, Claire. That's Claire McLaughlin from Invest Northern Ireland. Much appreciated. Now, we're going to think about technology, but also the creative industries as well. Mike Jackson is the Entrepreneur Success Director of Tech Nation, and I'm going to ask you, Mike, momentarily to focus particularly on the Southwest. I know you have a national and global role. Next to Mike, we will have, I hope, the Chief Executive of Inspire Elite. That's Rob. And Rob, forgive me, I will find out your surname in due course when you're with us. Lynn Oxborough from Nottingham Trent will join us briefly as well. So will Francis Campbell, the Head of Business Engagement or Business Environment at the Thames Valley Berkshire LEP. And hopefully Peter Fleming will join us from the Growth Hub at Thames Valley Berkshire. He manages that Growth Hub. Mike Jackson, very good to see you, sir. Can you, you've been singled out at Tech Nation for praise in your programme. Just remind us what makes it tick and anything else from these sectors and regions.
Yeah, thanks, Ollie. So we are very, very pleased to see that Upscale, which is one of our 7 different national programs that we do, which are peer-to-peer programs for digital tech companies, has been accredited this year by the ScaleUp Institute, which is great news. I'm also pleased to announce that we have just passed a bit of a milestone for ourselves in terms of regional representation on our programs, where we've gone from 30% of regional companies outside London 2 years ago to now just touching 60%, which is quite an achievement, down to our national network of 11 entrepreneur engagement managers. And yes, as I am based in Bristol, I'm very pleased to say that the Southwest is increasing its numbers on our programs. We've got some great companies, particularly on our most recent net zero program, with some great companies from Bristol, including a personal favourite of mine, Let Us Grow, which is doing helping plants grow in containers and all that great work. And they call themselves a SaaS business, salad as a service, which I always think is the best tech joke I've ever heard. But I just wanted to just very briefly pick up on a kind of a COVID comment that Adam made, that not all sectors have been affected in the same way through the lockdown and the crisis. And certainly we see the tech sector as perhaps being the strongest overall sector of all in the UK economy, the most resilient, certainly. And out of our 700 alumni companies, we've actually not seen any business failures yet. Some clearly are having to hibernate, some having to pivot quite dramatically.
Yeah, good.
But we've also seen no let up in the applications to our programs this year, which is a great sign. And the quality is increasing all the time of the companies that are coming forward. And finally, we've seen a bigger focus this year, and it's been mentioned by a number of the people on the call, in internationalization. And we're about to embark on a pilot with DIT for doing a big digital trade network focusing on Asia Pacific, which is a great growth area for the UK economy. So overall, a very positive message from us on tech.
Good. No, thank you, Mike Jackson. Good to hear about Let Us Grow. I do realise that is just the tip of the iceberg. I believe that we are joined by Henrietta, not Rob at all, from Inspire Elite. Henrietta, are you with us?
Yes, good morning, thank you. I was just going to touch on three things because most of our experiences mirror some of the things that have been said earlier. Beginning of the year, we launched our virtual board product, which was to try and address the challenge around access to mentors, and that's really now gaining traction as we approach the end of the year. It takes highly experienced non-exec advisors and using digital meetings to make the support more cost effective. It's being used to address skill gaps in current boards, but also as an entry-level product for those that currently don't have a board. So sort of first-time NED advisors for some of the SMEs.
Yeah.
The second thing that I'd like to reflect on is sort of we're seeing a generational shift and an increased need for a fulsome education as leaders need help really to try and reimagine their business, their purpose and their products. We're launching the Inspire Academy as a direct result of this in January, not only to address this, but also because of its cohorted nature, we're hoping that that would help strengthen local peer groups. And finally, sort of access to capital, we all know that's still very challenging, but we're seeing more customers looking at the alternatives out there, and we're building an investor group to try and help improve knowledge and access locally down in the Southwest, because we represent heart of the Southwest, so Somerset, Devon, as well as Swindon and Wiltshire.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Henrietta. And kudos to your marketing team as well, because those are some of the best branded initiatives I've heard this morning. That's seriously terrific and very substantial as well. So thank you. I wonder if we can hear from Lynn Oxborough, Nottingham Trent. Good morning, Lynn. I'd love to know your latest and particularly the programmes that you have seen support others.
Thanks very much. Yes, good morning, everybody. We've in the Upscaler programme, which we deliver from Nottingham Business School at Nottingham Trent University, I'd like to pick up on a few points that other people have mentioned and one that nobody has mentioned. So our programme is very, very small, and I think it highlights the amount of impact that can be had from a collaborative programme between the university, the Chamber of Commerce and the Growth Hub. And one of the things I wanted to say is that our clients tell us that it's the work that we did earlier in the programme that has really helped them to be resilient through the crisis. So they were much more prepared and much more able to pivot and to refocus. So that's been a real credit, I think, to our programme. Our focus is very much on peer learning and on leadership development. So we stick to those sorts of topics, and our businesses are multi-sectoral. So there isn't really a standout pattern. But some of the things that we have noticed is that there has been some reflection, as someone else mentioned, and we are noticing that there's some succession going on in the management teams of our ScaleUp leaders. In fact, we've got some family businesses introducing younger members into the team, and we've got other businesses handing over to younger people within their leadership teams. Yeah. We've also had a very high rate of graduate recruitment from our businesses. We do give them a small grant to recruit a graduate, and we're really keen to point out that that has picked up tremendously quickly again since August. And so we had a quiet period over the sort of COVID lockdown number one. And some of our graduates were furloughed, but most of them are now back at work, and we've got new graduates that are taking up posts at the moment as we speak. And the other final point that I'd make is that I know we've talked a little bit about university collaborations with SMEs, but one of the things that we also are able to do is to get our clients into other university-related programs. So they take on student projects, they work with some of our other funded programs, and we've referred something like 30 plus women leaders to our Women in Leadership programme. So we've done a lot in terms of breaking down the barriers between the businesses and the university population.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. That's Lynn Oxborough there, giving us the update as she sees it. That's very helpful indeed. I wonder if I can bring in Jennifer Holton from the Southern Group. Jennifer, are you with us? I'd love to hear your latest.
Good morning, Ollie. Yes, I am indeed. Coming to you virtually from Scale Space in West London. We're a new ScaleUp community that opened our doors in July this year. So a different update from us in that we're a newcomer to this fantastic group of ScaleUp and support hubs across the country. So we are essentially 200,000 square foot of new office and lab space supporting ScaleUps in West London. Wow. We're a joint venture between Imperial College London and the venture builders Blenheim Shalcott. And essentially we exist to activate that space. We've always said we're more than a building. We want to unlock the power of UK innovation, very much connected to the talent and expertise from the university. So a lot of our programs are centering on talent and optimizing all of those opportunities across college through our talent clinics in-house. Leadership and growth networks, access to NEDs and all of other kinds of expert support there, peer-to-peer engagement and market access through our international partners. We continue to work with the ScaleUp Institute. They were a supporting partner in our flagship series, The Scale Factor, which launched in September this year. We had a fantastic keynote from Irene. And we very much look forward to being a continued part of this community and to advancing our growth and helping scale-ups in West London to succeed and expand.
Very good. No, thank you very much indeed, Jennifer. Much appreciated. So to quote the village people, we're going to go west now, down to the Thames Valley. I'm not sure if we've got Francis on the line, Francis Campbell.
We've got Peter.
We do, but we've got, I tell you who we have got. We've got Peter Fleming. It's very good to see you. Very good backdrop there. Peter Fleming, who is the Growth Hub Manager at Thames Valley, Berkshire. I don't know if Adam Hale's got a hot desk there, but he probably should. Peter, tell us what's been brewing and how you're getting on.
Good morning, Ollie, Irene, Adam. Welcome, everyone. Thames Valley, Berkshire, our ScaleUp programme is not a programme as such, it's an account managed service. So we work with about 100 of our local ScaleUp businesses, and our role is to enable them to access the resources to help them grow. Basically, we make the work for them. What we've seen this year is really most of the businesses, even in early lockdown, saw opportunity. As they evolved through the summer, those businesses became more agile. Interestingly, the number of businesses that actually became more productive and far more innovative.
Interesting.
And I think it's fair to say across that 100-odd clients, that there really there's more a view of what can we control rather than what we can control. So even big issues like EU exit, everyone knows it's an issue, but they're refusing to let it be a barrier until there's clarity around what they can control. And then finally, on behalf of Francis Cross from Thames Valley LEP, who actually run our growth hub, the LEP have been doing an awful lot of engaging with local stakeholders over the last few months, and they've developed a new recovery and renewal plan. And they're wanting to create within Berkshire the concept of entrepreneurship, where we have a large number of corporates in the region, meets entrepreneurship to connect the scale-ups within our community to the corporates to act as a pipeline for innovation. So that's what's driving us in Berkshire at the moment.
No,
Friday,
I love that.
ambitious.
That is, I mean, you know, the M4 corridor has been likened to Silicon Valley in the past, but I love that idea of entrepreneurship within these large corporates, and I'm sure that Rick, chairman of MasterCard, would wholeheartedly approve of that. Thank you, Peter Fleming. Before we go on to our very final group, Irene, if we missed anyone in this group,
no, I think we've managed to get through everyone. Thank you for bearing with us with some of the technical aspects, but really great to just see what's happening on the ground. I mean, at the end of the day, we can't make a scale-up culture if we don't have you doing what you're doing, and that's that's really important to us. So great to see you virtually, and we'll be seeing you personally soon, I hope.
No, good. No, I agree. Well, to quote Arnie himself, we should get to the chopper because we're going up into the helicopter for our final 3 reflections. They're coming thick and fast. It's a good job we sent you the coffee, isn't it, when you think about it? Goodness, look at it. This is our final group reflections. Our next speaker will be known to all of you, I'm sure. Marcus Stuttard. He is the head of UK markets and AIM at the London Stock Exchange. Marcus, as we pause for breath, step back, the ScaleUp report has landed with a thump on our doormat or in our inbox. Your big picture reflections on today.
Thanks, Ollie. So obviously the big picture reflection is it's disappointing that access to finance after so many years of this report has risen as a key concern. But I think actually there are some real positive signs. We've heard about the resilience of the ScaleUp community. Certainly from a capital markets perspective, in the first 3 quarters this year, we saw over £35 billion raised. We've seen £4 and a bit billion raised on AIM. I heard Andy talking about the healthcare sector earlier and the challenges there. But to put that into context on AIM in the main market, we've seen £2 billion this year raised by healthcare companies through 50 deals. So look, the institutional investors and also individual retail investors have really continued to support businesses. The other thing is we've all moved to this virtual environment. We've seen things happen that we could never have imagined 9 months ago. Companies like the Hut Group conducting, and many others actually since September, conducting virtual IPOs where all of their interaction with investors has been virtually. And so that's actually really helpful in breaking down, I think, some of the regional barriers. People aren't having to travel to engage with investors, but clearly we're going to have to do a much greater job at signposting where the finance is so that people know who to connect with virtually. But I think there is a lot to be positive about. And I think in terms of the homework between now and next year, we just need to get that access to finance concern amongst ScaleUp management teams down to a lower place again.
Yeah, and it does sound from what you're saying, Marcus, that the big challenge is one of connectivity, of signposting, that actually that's quite an abundant view, that we have what we need. We just need to connect it in better ways. Or would you like to see more finance coming in from wherever that might be?
Yeah, I think we're going to need more finance as well. We heard from Stephen and others earlier about the critical role that the pension funds could and should be playing. We've got a very deep pool of capital in the UK. We've also been very reliant for scale-ups on international capital flowing in. I think the more that we can do to get domestic capital really working within the scale-up community, the better. And to that point, great to hear Alex and many others talking this morning about that real sort of coalition of the willing that we've all built over many years, now focusing at the later end of the financing ecosystem and trying to make sure that our scale-ups continue to grow and hopefully an increasing number IPO over the coming year.
No, well, good. Well, here's to that. Thank you, Marcus Stuttard. Always very good to see you. Marcus referencing there Alex Hickman, advisor to the Prime Minister, who joined us with some very supportive words right at the top of this morning's broadcast. Our final contribution, and we're very grateful to the camaraderie and support of the LSEG, the London Stock Exchange Group, Umera Akram. And forgive me, Umera, I hope I've pronounced your first name correctly there.
It's Umera.
Forgive me.
Thank you, Ollie. Morning, everyone. Obviously, saving the best for last.
Yes.
So I don't want to repeat. I think really what everyone has said, what all the different networks and programs across the country have said. We've had similar experiences. We are a scale-up ourselves, so we've really seen how challenging the circumstances have been. We focused on digital delivery, having that kind of peer-to-peer engagement in that fashion. We've seen great levels of engagement, not just from our existing community, but from the SME and scale-up community more broadly. We launched, in the immediate weeks, a campaign called Elite Together to be a single point of reference for our members, but also the broader business population. But really, 3 of the things that we have focused on for the longer term have been around resilience. So actually launching a number of free webinars where we talk about how you actually very specifically create a resilience plan in your business, and giving companies a toolkit that they can take away and think about it for in their businesses. The second is, which I think actually Adam touched upon in his initial remarks, is really about raising that level of ambition. That is really at the core of what Elite is trying to do, raising that level of ambition for companies around the country. And it's certainly amongst the ScaleUp community, but also the businesses that are just below that ScaleUp community. How can we help raise that level of ambition to bring them into that community? So that, I think that comes from sharing of case studies, but also really the peer-to-peer engagement we've talked about, and how we see the companies and entrepreneurs sharing their challenges and learning from each other. And the third aspect, which is, of course, core to what we do and what we at Elite have been focused on, is really that access to capital, not just demystifying the process of raising capital, but also giving companies the confidence to understand those different types of capital providers, not just your traditional VC, PE or institutional investors, but also, we're seeing new types of investors, sophisticated family offices, different types of debt providers coming into the mix, and then actually facilitating that fundraising of companies. But really, all of this we're doing in collaboration with the various networks, programs that we've heard from today. We've been continuing our relationship with Scottish Enterprise, for example, building on what we're doing with Welsh Development Bank, but many others. And I encourage more people to come and engage with us, because we're finding really creative ways of how we can encourage that collaboration, but also facilitate that fundraising. And that's in the private capital markets rather than just the public capital markets. Of course, if companies go on to IPO, access our public markets, that's a brilliant result as well.
No, good. Well, thank you, Umar Akram, who has been very involved with the Elite programme, which again has been highlighted as a brilliant force for positive change. So thank you to you and all of your colleagues. And thank you to all of the guests who have been with us for Good Morning Scale-Ups, as we have taken a sort of race around the UK and everything that drives the scale-up ecosystem here in Britain. I hope it might be a source of inspiration for you, and maybe even beyond these shores as well. I would love to know your top reflections from this morning. Please do share them far and wide. Hashtag keep on scaling, hashtag ScaleUp 2020. That whole report is now available for you to digest and share, please, far and wide on ScaleUpInstitute.org. .uk. Now, I've been on this ride throughout this morning, of course, with Irene, but also with Adam, the chair of the ScaleUp Institute. Adam, I get a moment of challenge, hopefully some pride in the amazing work that the Institute has done. I wonder if I can get just a reflection or two as we wrap up.
Well, the first thing is that this is the first time we've done this remotely. And actually, it's been great just to be able to kind of go live and have all the different people from around the country, different guys. So I think that's been fantastic. But I just wanted to say thank you to three groups of people. The first one is all of the ecosystem, all of the ScaleUp Institute's partners. We've heard from so many of them today. Thank you for all of the combined work that you do. Second one is to Irene, the team and the board of the ScaleUp Institute who give such fantastic work. So thank you to all of you for that great work. The third one is to the ScaleUps themselves. You are the organisations that are driving this growth. We know it's incredibly valuable what you do, but we also know that it's not easy to grow a business that fast and that well. And a message to you is we are here to help you. Reach out to us, to all of the different people that you've heard of today. We're here for your success. But thank you to all the parties.
Great. Thank you, Adam, and I second that. Thanks entirely. My final thanks is to you for tuning in. The ScaleUp report is a hugely substantial piece of work, and I commend it to you. Please let's share it far and wide, because in the words of the X-Files, the truth is out there. But actually, so are the answers, and it is a challenge of connectivity. So the more we can share the problems worth solving with the people who might have the answers, the better. It's been an absolute honour to be your host and your co-host this morning. But for now, at Good Morning Scale-Ups, I'm Ollie Barrett. wishing you a very good day and handing you back to the Chief Executive of the ScaleUp Institute, Irene Graham. Irene.
Thank you so much, Ollie, the master chef, I think, of coordinating around this multicultural and multi-varied country today and multi-subject. So thank you to you, Adam, thank you to you and the board for all you do every single day for the ScaleUp Institute. Thank you, everybody out there. We're Good morning, ScaleUp still. We haven't quite gone into the afternoon. Apologies for that little bit of overrunning that happened there. But, you know, it is about you. It's about the ScaleUps and it's about this community and what we do next. We said it earlier, keep segmenting, keep engaging and keep scaling. And finally, just a huge thanks to the team of the ScaleUp Institute. I haven't seen all of them for 8 months. I know many of you are in the same boat, but they are terrific. So David, Richard, Josh, Penny, Maddie, Claire, Stuart, Alan, Ellie, Sherry, Rebecca, take a bow. This is the State of the Nation Scale-Up Economy Report for 2020, and the Current Affairs team now is signing off. Take care, everybody. Keep segmenting, keep scaling, and keep engaging. Bye.